There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Order, honorable members. I wish to acknowledge the presence in the gallery of a delegation of councillors from the city of Johannesburg, led by Councillor Mogane. Honorable councillors, please feel welcome in our parliament. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Opposition. The Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, the motion is a draft resolution that the House, 1, notes with sadness the sudden passing of our colleague, Tanya Elena Baker, after being involved in a tragic accident on the 7th of October 2017. 2, further notes that on the day of her passing, Tanya was in the Ugu District Municipality, KwaZulu-Natal Province, attending to her oversight responsibilities as a member of the Portfolio Committee of Water and Sanitation. 3, acknowledges that she worked tirelessly as a Democratic Alliance's constituency head of the Govan and Beki and Lekwa constituencies in Mpumalanga. 4, further acknowledges the invaluable contributions Tanya made in the work of the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation in pursuit of the improvement of our South African people's lives. 5, recalls the generosity, the diligence and passion with which Tanya tackled every single task that came before her. 6, remembers her wonderful and warm personality that will make her presence sorely missed. And 7, conveys its heartfelt condolences to her husband Landon Paul Baker, her 3 children Tercia, Talin and Mia, her grandson Ethan David Koopman, as well as her family in the Democratic Alliance and her colleagues in this Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. I now call upon the Honourable Dreyer.
Mr. House Speaker, during the last motion of condolences for a colleague, Trevor Bonhomme, Tanya Baker was the speaker from the DA side. He was her uncle. She spoke with such compassion and love. She delivered a truly remarkable tribute. But no one could possibly have guessed that the next motion of condolence would be for her. I'm sure we were all shocked to hear of her tragic passing after a horrific accident. She was on her way after an oversight visit to her hometown, Durban, where her family was waiting for her. Yes, Tanya was born and bred in Durban, where she also matriculated, and she later on became a teacher. After she'd become a member of Parliament, she decided to continue her studies, registering for political governance and economics at the Wits University. Tanya Baker has been my colleague since May 2014, when we were all sworn in as members of this 5th Parliament. As she was from Mpumalanga and I'm from Gauteng, we have not really met before that time. But the first time we spoke face to face and got to know each other, I will never forget. She approached me and came to stand before me with her hands on her hips like this, in a somewhat challenging and what I later learned to be a trademark of Tanya, a cheeky manner. And she said to me, "So Anshan, do you know about your colored family? Because I'm also a Dreyer," she said to me. When I replied in the affirmative and told her about another colored Dreyer, who was a councillor was then a councillor in Randfontein in the West Rand, where my constituency was, as well as my own daughter's colored cousin, she was, very unusual for Tanya, silent, but only for a few seconds. Then she reassured me that her family actually reflect the Rainbow Nation of South Africa and that she was sick and tired of race classification. After that interchange, After that interchange, the topic of race was irrelevant, and we never mentioned it again. However, we still have not found our common Dreyer ancestor. Apart from this one incident where Tanya did not immediately have an answer ready, Tanya was never at a loss for words. She usually had an answer to almost everything, in a humorous manner, mostly. She often made me laugh. During the exceptionally heavy rainstorms a year or so ago in Gauteng, that was particularly hard hit, the OR Tambo airport was particularly hard hit, and stories soon started circulating that the parking area was flooded and cars were actually drifting out of the parking area. We were chatting and I said to her, Tanya, I hope my car is still where I parked it when I go back home. And she said, Anshe, maybe your car will meet you at the entrance. Talking of cars, when their family priest had to do without his car for a few days while it was in for repairs and he had to go somewhere, she simply gave him her car to drive around. And apparently, he was very impressed with this gesture and told everyone that he was driving an MP's car. Her sense of humor was only matched by her compassion for others and her readiness to assist whenever she could. Despite a busy and demanding job, she remained humble and made sure she continued her involvement in the soup kitchen, helping others in need. Perhaps her compassion for others was grounded in her strong Christian beliefs. Tanya and her family were devoted Catholics and did not just talk about it, they lived it. She and her husband Landon went to Mass every Sunday and practiced what was preached. I was intrigued to hear from Landon that when the family had to decide on which hymns would be sung on her memorial service, it was very easy for them because he took Tanya's hymn book out of the shelves. He discovered a book of paper with her handwriting on it. On it, she had written down her choice of hymns to be sung at her own funeral. Thereby, Tanya made the funeral arrangements easy for her family. Her family was everything to her. She and her beloved Landon had 3 children, Tertia, Talon, and the late Lameki, Mia, and also her beloved grandson, Ethan. To her family who are here in the gallery, you were the most important people in her life. We know because she made no secret about it. She spoke about you often and with great pride. When the older children participated in a cooking competition, the whole caucus knew about it. She enthusiastically promoted your team, the Muttonheads, and we all saw the pictures she posted on Facebook. When Tanya was away from home, she liked to do some gardening in the parliamentary village where many of us live. She planted roses in pots outside the front door of her house in Acacia Park, which she carefully nurtured. After her untimely passing, one of Tanya's colleagues, Desiree van der Walt, took it upon herself to look after Tanya's roses and watered them regularly. They are now in full bloom. And the flowers we have put there on her bench come from those rose bushes she so lovingly cultivated. During her short 3 years in Parliament, Tanya had served on various portfolio committees, but her heart was in water and sanitation. She insisted that she wanted to be a member of that committee, even if she was the DA's 3rd member on that committee without voting rights. We usually have only 2 members on any particular committee. When she eventually became a full member, she was already dedicated and committed and a very knowledgeable member of that committee. And it was doing exactly what she loved doing the most, traveling to do an oversight visit and attending to problems of people in need when she was killed. I still find it difficult to believe that she's gone. Her energy, her passion, her commitment and dedication to what she believed in has left a gaping hole in our caucus and in Parliament. Her voice is silent, but we will never forget Tanya. She has left a legacy and a contribution to her party and her country will live on in our memories. Tanya, we salute you, and may your soul rest in peace.
The next speaker is the Honorable Chauke.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the ANC, we want to pass our heartfelt condolences to the family, friends, colleagues, in particular the political party that the Honorable Baker represented, the Democratic Alliance. My encounter with the Honorable Baker was when I joined the Portfolio Committee in 2016 of Water and Sanitation. And the first engagement I've had with her was, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the Northwest." And then I asked her back, "Where do you come from?" She says, "I'm both from Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal." Now, are you a member of the DA? Yes, I'm a member of the DA by membership. The fact is that, Chauke, I grew up in a revolutionary family. My uncle taught me politics. But what I find today is that the ANC that we grew up knowing, it's no longer the ANC that we want. Therefore, I've decided to join the DA. The point I'm making is that she then says that if you can correct the following, I will definitely come back and join the ANC. And the point we're making with her and the chair of the committee was that these issues, in fact, are issues that we are resolving in December. Now, it means that where Tanya Baker is now, she's waiting to be accepted by the spirit of the Oliver Tambo, your Nelson Mandela, your Walter Sisulu, your O.R. Tambo. That's where she is now. That's where her heart lies. Therefore, the point that we're making is that as the ANC is that she has made so much contribution at a very short space of time. She was one of the most warmest members of parliament, very sharp, in fact, when it comes to detail. When we deal with the reports from the Portfolio Committee, Tanya will go into the detail of that report, the fine lines, and she will bring forward the issues and said, here the department did not address the following, and very critical on accountability and oversight. But we then came to understand her love for a country and a people, her love for a constituency where she was deployed, because she was working side by side with the ANC where she was deployed. She did not only see herself as a DA member, but she then felt, Bason will confirm that, Honorable Bason will tell you that, she always says, in my heart lies the revolutionary blood, Chauke. What we want to see is this better, a good, well-run country, which all of us, we are working on that goal. Side by side, I think we have done so much work in that Portfolio Committee of Water and Sanitation. She was in the forefront of accountability. Forefront, not leading from the back. So therefore, I want to say to the family that you have not only lost a mother, a sister, you have lost a revolutionary, a freedom fighter, because she represented a particular view, which the leader of the opposition understands what I'm saying. Together in the funeral, when we were in that funeral, paying our last respect and the farewell to the member of parliament, both the leader of the opposition, the chief whip of the opposition, and ourselves, as the ANC component, we went there in numbers, together with the EFF there. You know, Mam Kaula was there, the IFP was there. You know, I have not seen Ahang because they don't attend such important things. I have not seen them. I know that the Kubeka, the other small parties, in fact, they were trying to be there. But Ahang will not understand these things because, you know, these things is where we begin to find ourselves. These are things that brings us together as a family. On that note, I want to say, from the ANC, we want to say, moya wa yena o tlela hi kurhula u tirhile ntirho wa wena hi khenso swinene mani hi ta vonana futhi ka misava leyi landzelaka inkomo ha khensa ri va ANC ka mitirho ya yena.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Kaula.
Ngibonge sihlalo. Ayi nathi ngisi EFF la ngisizwakalisa okukhulu ukukhathazeka ngokudlula ka Honorable Becker. Lilonke nje uBecker wayengomunye umuntu noma bengomunye umuntu obehlukile ekomidini. Enza sure ukuthi ufuna ukubona abantu phansi bethola lokhu abakuvotela. Ngibonge nalela committee linayo lento ukuthi masikhona kukhonjiswa njengoba sikulona siyosebenzela abantu. Khona zababhlungu indlela zokuzwa ukuthi sedlulile Honorable Becker. Into eyenza ukuthi kube buhlungu ngoba sasikade sinaye ngolwesine. Kusetshenzwa kungadlalwa. And into ebengiyithanda ngoBecker bebaza abantu phansi ukuthi kufanele bathola amanzi. Ngikhumbula nje kuna presentation yasenkomazi eMpumalanga. Laba bezokwenza khona bezothula khona ireport yabo beka ngokuthi amanzi akhona. Wazwabuza igama elinzima wathi lawo manzi enithi akhona ngabe aclean na ukuthi abantu bengawaphuza. Okunye ngikubaluleke yena ngoba ngasho ukuthi umuntu mayizohamba uNkulunkulu uyakwazi ukuthi anifihlele. Uthana benza sure ukuthi ubheka each and everything ukuthi ziyenzeka neimali eyilandela ukuthi zisebenza ngendlela efanele yini na. And ubeze agcizelele thina silahlekelwe nangekomiti. Yebo nomndeni wakhe ulahlekelwe kodwa nathi ekomidini silahlekelwe ngoTanya. Engikukhumbulayo nje ila nama ngikhala khona ngabantu basemakhawutha banawo amanzi. Wezwathi yazi nami Mam Khawula, Honorable Khawula, nginenkinga abantu ogwina banawo amanzi. Kuyimanje Friday nje ngizohamba ngiyekhona. Benza sure ukuthi uTanya uyaya phansi ayobheka ukuthi izinto esikhuluma ngazo la kwikomiti ziyenzeka yini. Okunye ngikukhumbulayo engithe mangabe sengithola indaba ezibhlungu ukuthi asekho ngakhumbula ukuthi wagcizelela le amanzi ukuthi labantu basemakhaya abanza baphuza clean yini. Waphinda wazothi sihlalo ngiyacela ukuthi ke sihambe siye ku study tour eChina siyobheka bona ukuthi lezi inkinga esinazo zesomiso if bona zibahlasela benze njani. uMrs Baker bewumuntu ohleze ehlekela kodwa ukuhleka kwakhe ekhombisa ukuthi ufuna izinto phansi zenzeke. Engiphatheke kambi ngizwa ukuthi uhambile usefake futhi sesishiyela ngendlela ebuhlungu. Njenge-member of parliament nelunga le-EFF ngithi mndeni wakaBecker nabatwana nomkhwenyana wakhe uqobo ngiyazi ukushonela kunzima. Ngithi dudu uNkulunkulu uphile uNkulunkulu uthathile nabatwana laba bakhe ngithi mabaduduzeke. Bengiyojabula nje sileli komiti lethu lamanzi nathi siyokwenza esikubone kwenziwa uTanya, Honorable Tanya kwi-portfolio committee. Bengalovi futhi into ebengiyithanda ngaye. And noma bekuhlasela ngokubuza bengabuzi ngokuthi akhombise ukuthi uyalwa. Ubenza sure ukuthi silana sizosebenza Uyabo. Engakusho nje lilonke uThana usinikeze enye into ukuthi masila funa sazi sizosebenzela abantu. Sazi ukuthi njoba sila we are not kuphela ukuthi sama honorable. Inhloso yethu kubona abantu phansi benzeka. Bengiyocela ke la ukuthi zonke lezi zinto ashone ekhala ngazo ugu njoba amanzi bekhala ukuthi abanawo. Babonakala abantu basegwini benawo amanzi. Naleyo ukuthi njoba ayikhala ngokuthi ufuna ke siphinde sithole lento estudy tour. Siye ko China. Siyobheka lenkinga ekhona esibhekene nayo.
Honorable Member, your time is now expired.
Kwenzeke ngiyabonga.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Kulu.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of my leader, Principal Telezi, and all members of staff of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I wish to pass our deepest and heartfelt condolences to Tanya's family and friends and her colleagues in the Democratic Alliance. Mrs. Baker, who was taken so tragically from us on the 6th of October, whilst involved in parliamentary oversight work on water and sanitation, is a great and untimely loss to the people of South Africa, whose best interest she so diligently served as a proud member of our National Assembly. Mrs. Baker was not only an adroit politician, but also a loving wife and devoted mother. I had the privilege of serving alongside Mrs. Baker in the Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation and can attest to her diligence and capability. She made a difference, and her untimely and tragical passing is sorely lamentable. Tanya made sure that challenges facing our communities on matters of water were immediately addressed. She was a true servant of the people. Death has truly robbed the Portfolio Committee of Water and Sanitation of a dedicated MP who put people first. To Tanya, her friends, family, and colleagues, you remain in our thoughts and prayers. May her soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now call upon the Honourable Shelembe.
Honourable Chairperson, honourable members of the House, the National Freedom Party shares in the sadness of this honourable House today as we pay tribute to a fellow member. The late Honourable Tanya Baker was a respected colleague in this August House, a dedicated member of the Portfolio Committees on Human Settlement and Water and Sanitation. It was on an oversight visit to Ugu District doing her duty that the life of the late Honourable Baker was so suddenly extinguished. The NFP identifies strongly with the description of the late Honourable Baker as a devoted public representative with untiring commitment and dedication to the service of the people. Working together with her in the Portfolio Committees on Human Settlement and Water and Sanitation, I have witnessed firsthand her dedication and her tireless quest to make sure that the interests and needs of our people are served with enthusiasm and sincerity. Her passion was an inspiration to me personally, and I'm sure for many others of us gathered here today. We extend our sincere condolences to the bereaved family of Honourable Baker, who are coming to terms with the loss of a loving wife and a mother. We also offer our condolences to the Democratic Alliance, who has lost a loyal and dedicated colleague. We pray that you will find solace and comfort in the knowledge what the late Honourable Baker made a valuable contribution to the steady progress of our democracy, and that her memory will live on in the hearts of many people. May her soul rest in everlasting peace. I thank you.
The next speaker is the Honorable Majeke.
Honorable House Chair, honorable members. The United Democratic Movement received the sad news of the late Honorable Tanya Baker's unnatural and sudden demise with great shock and sadness. Even though she has already been placed to her lasting resting place, we are still trying to come to terms with this tragic, sad reality. We have known Tanya for her commitment for the upliftment of the lives of the people of South Africa and her passion to strive for excellence in her work. She was a strong woman, always very focused, determined, and she died while still in the service of the nation. Indeed, we have lost a great colleague who was full of life and energy. In her capacity as a member of Water and Sanitation Portfolio Committee, on the 23rd August 2017, Honorable Tanya sought clarity on the disparity between 100% achievement recorded for the cash management agencies under analysis per budget program and the 28% achievement recorded for the same program under income and expenditure for Proto-CMA. This level of detail can only be attributed to her focused approach to work, passion for detail, and the uncompromising service to the people. Our heartfelt condolences go out to her husband, the family, friends, and her political family, the Democratic Alliance. We will honor her memory as we continue our work towards a better South Africa for all. We will espouse integrity in our daily labor, work towards ensuring dignity for each and every South African, and building a prosperous nation. May her soul rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Mulder.
Geachte voorsitter, geachte collega's, die familie van Tanya Baker wat in die galery is. Dit is 'n goeie en 'n gepaste gebruik wat ons in die raad het om van tyd tot tyd as dit iets soos hierdie gebeur, so 'n tragedie, om net stil te staan en te stop en weg te beweeg van die politieke werk waarmee ons besig is en op 'n gepaste wyse erkenning te gee en hulde te bring aan 'n kollega van ons wat ons ontval het. Tanya Baker was nie lank 'n lid van die parlement nie. Sy het 3 jaar gedien in die raad. Maar in daardie 3 jaar het sy reeds, daar was sy gedien het by die komitee wat handel met water en sanitasie, het sy reeds haar stempel afgedruk en was dit duidelik dat sy 'n verskil gemaak het. Sy was 'n persoon en die getuienis wat ons skryf van alle kante af was baie duidelik, sy het 'n verskil gemaak en dit is bitter belangrik. Vir ons en vir haar kollegas hier van die Demokratiese Alliansie neem ons afskeid vandag en ons bring hulde aan 'n kollega. Vir ons was dit 'n kollega met wie ons saamgewerk het. Maar vir haar familie en haar vriende is dit 'n totaal ander situasie. Vir hulle gaan dit oor 'n eggenoot. Dit gaan oor 'n ma. Dit gaan oor 'n ouma. Dit is 'n baie meer persoonlike en 'n privaat situasie as vir ons wat afskeid neem en hulde bring aan 'n kollega. Sy het haar rol vervul in Mpumalanga waar sy hard gewerk het vir haar party en ook daar het sy haar kant gebring en op haar manier 'n bydrae gemaak. In die huldeblyke wat vandag gelewer is hier, spesifiek van kollega Angeen Dreyer af, wat vir ons gegee het baie meer van die persoonlike interaksie wat daar was, is dit duidelik dat Tanya was nie maar net nog 'n parlementslid nie. Sy was iemand wat 'n besondere rol gespeel het en 'n baie sterk verskil gemaak het. Die getuienis wat sê dat sy kom uit 'n familie uit waar hulle toegewyde Katolieke en Christene is, bly die dood altyd 'n moeilike situasie. Dit bly 'n moeilike saak. Maar as Christene weet ons dat die dood is nooit die einde nie. Dit is maar net 'n nuwe begin, al is dit moeilik om te verstaan. Namens die Vryheidsfront Plus wil ons opregte meegevoel betuig aan haar kollegas, maar spesifiek aan haar familie wat agterbly met mooi herinneringe, maar wat kan aangaan op die pad en haar altyd sal onthou. Baie dankie.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Carter.
Thank you, Chairperson. In many religious philosophical and methodological traditions, the soul is the intangible and unique essence, the core of each living being. It's what ultimately defines and differentiates each of us. In Catholicism, the soul is immortal. It does not die with a body from which it is separated by death, and with which it will be reunited in the final resurrection. It mentioned this for a number of reasons. Firstly, it was clear to all who met and interacted with Tanya that her faith and her Catholicism were important facets in Honourable Baker's life. Secondly, almost every person, be it colleagues, be it office bearers, political foe or friend, has in lamenting Tanya's most tragic and ultimate demise spoken of her soul, and I quote, "A warm and compassionate soul, a kind, lovely soul, a wonderful and warm person, passionate about her work, a dedicated public representative, diligent in her work and rigorous in exercising oversight, served with passion, energy, and with wisdom. She was a true servant of the people, an activist, gentle and sincere, qualities not often associated with politicians, and she was a devoted mother and a wife." What wonderful words to describe the essence of Tanya. What warm and wholesome phrases from which to find the beginning of solace and peace in the time of absolute heartbreak. The values and principles that defined who Tanya was are the very same values and principles that, if followed in service to our people and our country, represent the difference between good and indifferent and bad governance. South Africa needs more Tanya Bakers. We owe it to her legacy to continually strive for ethical leadership and good and progressive governance in our country. Finally, to Tanya's family, husband, children, I say, as much as one doesn't know and cannot comprehend another one's sorrow, please take pride from the values and the principles, the morality that informed the essence of your mother and wife's being here on earth, and find solace in her, and you believe in the immortality of the soul. On the 6th of October, God picked the most beautiful flower, his most beautiful rose. May her soul rest in peace, and Tanya fly with the angels. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
Chairperson, on behalf of the ACDP, we would like to express our deepest condolences to the family and friends of the late Honourable Tanya Baker, as well as to the DA. Now, other members have spoken very eloquently about her work here and the void that her passing has left, and we support those sentiments. We were deeply shocked when we heard the tragic news of her passing. And sadly, her death comes soon after that of the Honourable Tim Khoza, also in a road collision. Now, the Honourable Baker would have been sitting here when I said last month, which of those honourable members would have thought things would turn out so tragically as they left for the oversight visit that morning. Similarly, she would not have known what awaited her this month. But as a believer, she was prepared, and we heard about the selection of hymns. And members will recall how I reminded the House that life is very short. I read from James chapter 4 that our lives are like the morning fog. It's here for a little while, then it is gone. Life is indeed fleeting, and as we again see today, with deep sadness in the case of Tanya. There's no guarantees about tomorrow, let alone next year, 5 or 10 years. How are we living each day? If we ignore this lesson, we will not live our life properly in the light of eternity. We need to make our plans and live our lives according to God's commands and purposes, and to make sure we are in a right relationship with the Lord Jesus and have repented of our sins. The wonderful example that we hear of soup kitchens, what incredible leadership did she not show? Are we spreading love, forgiveness, and reconciliation wherever we go? Are we being shining lights with our warm smiles like Tanya? Lastly, may Tanya's husband Landon and her 3 children, Tertia, Tala, and Amir, and her grandson, Ethan, be comforted in the knowledge that, as you've heard, she was loved here in Parliament, and she in turn shared love with her warm personality and bright smile. As a believer, she has run the race, she has kept the faith. Now there is in store for her the crown of righteousness. We pray that our Heavenly Father will surround her family and friends with His love and peace. And I just trust that the sentiments and our love for you as a family and your sacrifices, that will bring comfort to you today. May the Lord bless you as we pray for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Chaisa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. On behalf of African Independent Congress and my President, Mandla Galo, who has been serving with this lady on this Committee of Water and Sanitation, I hereby convey condolences to the bereaved family of Tanya Baker, Democratic Alliance, and members of the Committee of Water and Sanitation. We have lost a beloved daughter, a mother, a dedicated woman always was full of determination. We understand the pain in which you are, but you must remember that she was not meant to live forever. God gives and takes, and He is never wrong because His decision is always divine. He will keep you strong until the end. He is always faithful. Losing such a woman of her caliber is very much painful. We, however, appreciate the good work she was doing for the people of South Africa, then for the poor of the poorest in particular. She must be remembered for that good work. Her death could not have been prevented. Death is never early, never late, but it is always on time. That is the divine power and the secret of God. You are therefore not alone in this suffering. You don't hurt yourselves, you are all here. She died in harness, actually doing the work. May her soul rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, that concludes the speakers list on this matter. I take it that there are no objections to the motion being adopted. The motion is adopted. I now request all members to rise to observe a moment of silence in memory of Ms. T.E. Baker. Please be seated. The presiding officers associate themselves with this motion, and the condolences of the House is conveyed to the Baker family who has joined us in the gallery, and may her soul rest in peace. The Secretary will read the first to third orders together.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriations on study tour to Sweden and Germany, and consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriation on 16th Association of Public Accounts Committee Conference 2016, consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriations on Oversight visit to KwaZulu-Natal.
I now recognize the Honourable Posa, the chairperson of the committee, who will introduce the reports. The Honourable Posa.
Honourable Chair, honourable members, I would like to take this opportunity and introduce the reports as already indicated by the chairperson. The committee undertook the committee went or attended the APEC training in August 2017 on the 10th and the 11th this year. All members of the public accounts committees and municipal accounts committees traveled from all 9 provinces to attend, and the committee also participated in this training. The intention was to create a common understanding of the fiscal oversight as an urgent and necessary task. The APEC training creates an opportunity for members to learn from one another and interact with Auditor General, National Treasury, Public Service Commission, and other independent think tanks. This training was an eye-opener and sharpened our minds on effective oversight function. On the KwaZulu-Natal Oversight September 2017, the committee undertook an oversight to visit the KwaZulu-Natal province to assess health and water infrastructure in the province. The intention of the committee was to assess the progress made in the rollout of bulk water infrastructure and health infrastructure projects in the following districts: Umkhayakude District, King Cetshwayo District, Ilembe District, and Umgungundlovu District. And these project sites were visited: Jozini Regional Bulk Water Supply Project, Greater Mtonjaneni Bulk Water Supply Scheme, Ngayebo Bulk Water Supply Scheme, and Umshwati Bulk Water Supply Scheme. On health infrastructure, the committee visited the following areas: Jozini Community Health Center, Gwelezane Hospital, and the Grace Hospital. Observations are that whilst the committee found these projects up and running, there was lack of effective monitoring mechanisms in both sectors, which need to be addressed expeditiously. The committee is concerned about the absence of monitoring and evaluation mechanism, which is in contravention of the conditions contained in the budget framework for the transfer of funds through the Division of Revenue Act. The committee is of the view that Department of Water Affairs and Health, both at national, provincial, and regional level, should strengthen their monitoring and evaluation mechanisms in order to take timely corrective actions without any delays. The National Treasury, in partnership with the Department of Health and Water Affairs, strengthen the expenditure management in infrastructure development, focusing on maintenance. On the Sweden-Germany study tour, undertaken in January 2017, the Standing Committee on Appropriations undertook a study tour to Germany and Sweden from 28th of January to the 5th of February 2017. The purpose of the tour was to learn from these countries ways of ensuring that the budget process is effective and the legislative process followed on amending the budget and best practice in oversight mechanisms over budget implementation. German and Sweden parliaments' budget oversight objective is underlined by a clear commitment to fiscal and discipline and debt reduction. Honorable Chair, I would like to thank you. These are the reports.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Hey, thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we move that this House accepts and endorses and approves all these reports. Thank you very much.
There are requests for declarations. The Democratic Alliance.
This Parliament periodically sends delegations from various of its committees on so-called study tours to the parliaments of many countries around the world. Strangely, these delegations often comprise of only some of the members of the committees, as only certain selected individuals are afforded the privilege. In my humble opinion, this must surely, to a large extent, defeat the object of the exercise. On what basis is it logical to empower and educate only a certain portion of any committee? When questioned, the reason for this seemingly inequitable state of affairs is ascribed only to budgetary constraints. Further investigation reveals that those who go on these tours fly business class and are generally accommodated in five-star hotels or their equivalent. Obviously, this means that such tours involve a cost far higher than would be necessary for the purpose. Under the straitened circumstances that this country currently finds itself in, I would suggest that serious consideration should be given to the continuance of this practice. If a study tour is deemed necessary, it should surely be undertaken in a manner that is fair to all the members of the committee and at a cost that would reflect how seriously Parliament views the current financial state of the country. The second report deals with the Association of Public Accounts Committee's conference that was held in Bloemfontein. This was possibly the worst organized conference that I have ever had the misfortune to attend. Delegates trickled in and out of the conference as and when they saw fit. People were transported to all points of the compass as officials desperately tried to find out where their various wards were supposed to be. The conference was conducted over 3 days. the second of which was incredulously devoted to a choice of several tours to various places of interest in and around Bloemfontein. One of these tours took travellers all the way to Sasolburg, a 3.5-hour drive, to view a water treatment plant. Those unfortunate delegates who elected to go on this tour only returned to their hotels after midnight, having had little or no food for the day. All in all, this conference was an unmitigated failure and a total waste of money from the point of view of achieving its main aim of empowering the members of public accounts committees for the more effective scrutiny of public accounts and spending. I'm happy to report that the Oversight tour dealt with in the third report was a very different affair. On-the-ground oversight unfailingly reveals just how incompetent and ineffective this administration is in the areas of expenditure and intergovernmental relations and cooperation. Sadly, this revelation also exposes the many reasons for millions of rands worth of unauthorized, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. To cite a few examples of this, the beautiful new 275 million rand world-class community health center in Jozini, which was due to be completed in 2014, currently stands as a monument to incompetence and mismanagement. This project was delayed because work on the site carried on under the auspices of the Department of Public Works had to be stopped by the Department of Agriculture and Environmental Affairs due to the complete failure of the contractor to undertake an environmental impact assessment. This necessitated the removal and replacement of the existing soil base at huge cost in both time and money. When the construction work was finally completed, the facility could not be commissioned because it was then discovered that there was no reliable water supply to the facility. Although the Department of Water and Sanitation had built a new water treatment plant in the vicinity, the local community, having been promised water for many years by various visiting ANC dignitaries, happily drilled into the newly installed water line and helped themselves to the available supply of water, leaving no pressure for the health facility. At the time of our visit, a new dedicated steel water pipe was being installed at further cost to the Department of Health, who have been compelled to incur this unauthorized expenditure to make up for the inability of the local bankrupt municipality to meet its reticulation obligations. The staff at the previously mentioned water treatment plant advised their visitors that they had themselves decided to install basic reticulation in the area to supply the local communities with much needed water to make up for the municipality's failures. Despite this, the plant could provide 400% more than its current daily water uptake, indicating that a far larger plant than was necessary had been installed on this site. It should be noted that although the Department of Water and Sanitation's actions in providing the local community with water were very commendable, they were acting outside of their mandate and incurring unauthorized expenditure. It must be clear that if the various government entities involved in these two projects had taken the time to communicate effectively with each other, the problems described could have been avoided. The Democratic Alliance supports the reports. Thank you.
The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. It is the EFF views that expropriations and expropriations for public goods and service to the people. There's no any other better lessons we can learn from Sweden or Germany other than to take lessons from Amica Cabral, that people don't fight for things that are in the grandest minds of individuals, but fight to meet the material needs and benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. It is our view that expropriation is an instrument to allocate national revenue on equitable basis to meet the material needs of our people, as directed Amica Cabral. If appropriation fail to meet these aspirations, as we witnessed in the medium-term budget policy statement delivered yesterday here by one Gupta puppet, then, Honorable Chair, expropriation ceases to be an instrument to meet the needs of the people, but a legal instrument to loot and bankrupt the country further. South Africa is technically bankrupt.
Honorable Matiase, will you just take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honorable Member?
I rise in terms of Rule 92, in terms of House Chair. The Honorable Matiase refers to the Honorable Minister of Finance in the manner in which he has done to call him a Gupta puppet. We really object vehemently to that kind and ask him to withdraw immediately.
Honorable Matiase, did you say that?
No, I didn't. South Africa.
Honorable Matiase, you say you didn't make that remark.
I didn't.
We will check the recording, Honorable Member, and we'll come back to make a ruling. Thank you.
South Africa is technically bankrupt as we speak because of a handful of politically connected and corrupt individuals and leaders who get rich at the expense of the poor. This parliament must use expropriations and related laws to provide a decolonized, free and quality education to our people now. It must use the money bills to provide houses, electricity, clean and running water, and sanitation to our people now. This parliament must condemn plans to bankrupt the country further through reckless and dangerous nuclear deals, as seems to be the case now. And furthermore, call upon this parliament to exercise its oversight and constitutional mandate to keep departments of government, in particular the National Treasury, in checks and to hold those who steal and loot from the people accountable. And for all of this, the EFF stands here to affirm the correctness of the decision it took yesterday to walk out, instead of to be part of a process of being complacent with corruption that was taking place and witness crime taking place, and we refuse to be associated with further stealing of public resources.
The NFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, honorable members in the House and guests in the gallery. Let me start off by saying that the National Freedom Party supports the reports tabled here today. Honorable Chairperson, let me start off by talking about the APEC conference that was held. The APEC conference is a very, very valuable conference. However, the challenges that exist is that whatever we consume, whatever we learn from there, the question is, are we implementing it? And the response is clearly no. I know that one of the decisions that were taken was to ensure that all municipalities by the end of December have their municipal public accounts committees in place, and I'm not sure if to date that has been achieved or not. But what was also very, very clear is that despite having monitoring and evaluation processes in place, consequences is where we have a challenge. People tend to do the same thing year in and year out and do not pay the price for it. The oversight visit to the Jozini Health Center, obviously we've identified such challenges that I wasn't part of the visit, but in terms of the report and the engagements that took place in the committee, clearly there are some challenges in terms of the health facilities, in terms of the delays in infrastructure development, and for that the National Freedom Party calls on the National Department of Health to intervene together with the KZN Department of Health to ensure that they deal with these matters as a matter of urgency, including the overspending at Gray's Hospital in Pietermaritzburg. What has come very, very clear is both the Department of Water and Sanitation and the Department of Health in KwaZulu-Natal, there appears to be a serious problem in terms of oversight, in ensuring that projects in terms of the strategic plan, in terms of the budgetary processes, are implemented effectively and timeously. Honorable Chairperson, we also had an opportunity to do a study tour of Germany and Sweden. If I talk about Sweden, one was very, very remarkable in Sweden was the issue of the NSFAS funding, where we find 100% of loans are repaid through a system where 5% of the salaries are deducted from employees, and which I think is a lesson that maybe we as actually South Africa need to take in. There appears to be very, very little or no fruitless expenditure or wasteful expenditure, but what is important is this: whenever they do exist, they are dealt with timeously. So we've learned a hell of a lot from our actually visit there, including Germany, in terms of what we found that when it comes to large procurement and infrastructure projects, they ensure that before funds are allocated and approved, that feasibility studies are done to check for efficiency and whether the results are going to be positive. So I think in a nutshell that we've learned quite a bit. I think it's time to actually implement that. But as the National Freedom Party, we will welcome the reports tabled here and support them accordingly. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
Thank you, House Chairperson. On the
study tour to Germany, the ANC is satisfied that this study tour was taken at an appropriate moment to capacitate members to understand and to learn from both Germany and Sweden the budgetary processes they go through in order to make budgeting and implementation effective. We observed that the budget committees are a lot more strongly mandated to scrutinize the budgets of the departments and even the ministries, even before those budgets are presented to Parliament for adoption. What was also very interesting is the strength of the of what in our instance we call the Auditor General's office. In their case, the Auditor General's office, which they call, of course, by different names, are mandated to sit through the whole process of budgeting, implementation, and then be able to audit. We think that it would be important for Parliament to consider strengthening the direct participation of the Office of the Auditor General in the budgetary processes from the beginning through to implementation and then finally auditing. On the a conference of the Association of Public Accounts, the committees, the committee members are satisfied with the contents of the documents and the debates that ensued in the process. We are, however, concerned with the program of the conference, which seemed to focus more on shall I say, a bit of entertainment more than the real conference activities ahead of the activities themselves taking place. We would rather, but however, we do agree that we gained a deeper understanding and insight into the strength, into the accounting principles which would strengthen members of Parliament to understand and be able to read the audit report. Lastly, Chairperson, on the oversight of to KZN on the water infrastructure and also health infrastructure. Sifuna ukusho ukuthi njenge-ANC i-ANC isinikezele ekutheni yandise ingqalasizinda yezamanzi kuma-provinces wonke. Esakubona KwaZulu-Natal kwasikhombisa ukuthi lo msebenzi we-ANC okwandisa ingqalasizinda yamanzi kanye futhi nengqalasizinda yezikhungo zezempilo ihamba kahle kakhulu. Kodwa ke sifuna ukusho ukuthi siyakhathazeka njenge-ANC uma sibona ingqalasizinda ingasheshi ukwakhiwa iphele ngesikhathi ekade ikalelwe sona. Lokho okukhomba ukuthi i-planning ne-implementation nama-time frames kuyagejana. Lokho kudala ukuthi ke izimali zokusebenza bese zokwakha bese zigcina sezedlulele enanini elalikade libekiwe ukuthi lizosetshenziswa. Okwesibili esikubonile esifuna ukuphakamisa ukuthi omasipala kuyadingeka ukuthi banikezwe amandla ngokwezimali futhi banikezwe amandla kwamakhono, technical skills, ukuthi bakwazi ngaso sonke isikhathi
ukwenza ukuthatha amanzi emadamini amakhulu bawayise ezindlini ngezindlini zabantu. Leyo capacity iyaleka kancane, iyafuna ukuthi igcizelelwe. Ngasezibhedlela umsebenzi owenziwa i-Department of Health muhle kakhulu, nakhona kunenkinga kodwa yokuthi ingqalasizinda iyasilela ngemuva in terms of ama time frames yokuthi iqedakale. As a result bese kuba khona ama spending overruns. Izinto ke lezo esafike sazithola sazixoxa neziphathimandla zama province ze province yase KZN ezazikhona kanye nomasipala futhi ababekhona, savumelana ngokuthi izinto ekufanele sizilungise lezo. Siyakuthakasela futhi ukuthi ama officials province kanye nakamasipala kwezinye inkathi ngisho nomeya babekhona, kuyasithokozisa ukuthi bawuthathela phezulu umsebenzi wabo. Zikhona inkinga zezimali, zikhona inkinga ze technical and financial capacity, kodwa umsebenzi wabo bawuthathela phezulu. Lokho kukhomba ukuthi ke iANC isesimweni esihle kakhulu ukuthi ikwazi ukunikeza abantu amanzi aclean, ikwazi ukuthi izimpilo zabantu ziqhubeke zibe ngcono ngaso sonke isikhathi. Ngakho ke it is not an accident, chairperson, ukuthi i-lifespan yabantu base South Africa ikhulile iseyize icishe ifinyelele eminyakeni eyu-63 manje and iyanyuka ngokunjalo. As a result sizokwazi ukuthi i-target yokufika ku-70 years of life.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
Achieve. I thank you. We support the report.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The motion as moved by the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Environmental Affairs on 22nd session of Conference of Parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and other engagements.
I now call upon the Honourable Mpumalanga, the chairperson of the committee, who will introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. The South African parliamentary delegation was invited to attend the 22nd session of the Conference of the Parties, COP22, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was held in Marrakesh in Morocco on the 7th to the 18th of November 2016. Some of the key events attended by the delegation included the Interparliamentary Union Conference organized by the IPU and the Moroccan Parliament, the high-level segment of the conference, the Africa Day celebrations attended by the African heads of states and governments and in the African Pavilion, the meeting of the Nordic parliamentarians, the meeting of the European parliaments, as well as various other side events. The Marrakesh Climate Change Conference was significant in that it ushered in the first session of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement, referred to as the CMA-1. The CMA-1 launch took place following the ratification of the historic Paris Agreement of 2015 by an overwhelming number of countries, surpassing the double threshold of 55 countries, accounting for 55% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. South Africa was part of the countries which participated in this historic gathering in the history of climate change negotiations. The Paris Agreement, which was adopted after 4 years of intense negotiations, initiated by the 2011 COP17 Durban platform, was indeed a historic landmark in the history of climate change negotiations. It signaled the beginning of a fundamentally new course in the decades-old global climate change efforts. We would like to take this opportunity to thank members of this House for unanimously ratifying the Paris Agreement on the 1st of November 2016. The ratification of the Paris Agreement by this Parliament gave South Africa the necessary impetus and clout to continue influencing key decisions and outcomes in multilateral climate change negotiations, especially in light of the fact that the Paris Agreement was originally conceived here in our soil in 2011 through the COP17 Durban platform. Honorable members, climate change is not a rumor. It's not a theoretical, abstract, fascinating the imagination of the scientists, nor is it a conspiracy invented by the international environmental lobby groups, as some denialists like Donald Trump will want us to believe. Climate change is indeed a global reality. Emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions are changing the Earth's climate. Global efforts are therefore required to combat the rising temperatures, the extreme weather events, and the changing rainfall patterns which are caused by climate change. The Paris Agreement, among others, seek to do the following: seek to reaffirm the goal of limiting global temperature increases to well below 2 degrees Celsius, whilst urging efforts to limit the increases to 1.4 degrees Celsius, and to establish the binding commitments by all parties to make a 5-yearly nationally determined contributions and to pursue domestic measures aimed at achieving them, and a whole host of other objectives. The Marrakesh Conference successfully demonstrated to the world that the implementation of the Paris Agreement is underway, and the constructive spirit of multilateral cooperation on climate change continues unabated, despite the backward, archaic, and reckless perspectives on climate change as articulated by some in the world. As part of Africa Group, and as well as the leader of the basic countries for the Marrakesh Climate Change Conference, South African delegation is satisfied with the outcomes of the Marrakesh climate talks, which recognize the urgency of addressing climate change through the successful implementation of the Paris Agreement and the extension of the mandate of the Kyoto Protocol's
Honorable Member,
Adaptation Fund.
your time has now expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
House Chair, we move that the report be adopted by this House.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? There's no objections, but there's a request for declarations. The DA.
I think first and foremost it should be said that no one, and I mean no one, can treat climate change as a fluffy issue anymore. Over the years, experts have warned of the dangers of that climate change holds, yet so many have treated or seen them as being attention-seeking and attention seekers with nothing better to do with their time. It is evident, though, that they were right and that we should have been more proactive in our approach. This does not leave South Africa out. This became evident at COP22 last year. I was in absolute awe of so many participants and countries while interacting with delegates at meetings and side events and listening to their stories. It also became very evident to me that South Africa, although trying, we are still quite far behind. We have so much potential. Why aren't we doing more as a country? We can start by doing something simple that will have a massive impact, like climate change awareness. We have a crucial role to play in shaping people's perception of climate change and in building the political will needed to tackle this. We also need proactive climate change legislation in South Africa. There is ample evidence worldwide that countries which have proactively formulated laws to deal with certain issues are generally considered leaders in those matters. Why aren't South Africa on that list? This Parliament should ensure that the cost of climate change law is estimated as well as budgeted for to ensure effective implementation. It must ensure that targets contained in the law are worked into deliverable programs for the various government departments. We should also incentivize the public sector, because the private sector has a major role to play, and it's essential that they are involved, as well as encouraged to invest in sustainable low-carbon initiatives. This is imperative for South Africa to make sure that we are in line with the international targets. Unfortunately, low-carbon initiatives are very low on this government's priority list, and therefore we are moving at a snail's pace. South Africa should adopt a no-nonsense approach when it comes to climate change and environmental issues as a whole. Stop allowing entities, companies, or individuals to get away with polluting. Stop allowing the people of this country to pay their way out of trouble. Stop allowing the citizens to suffer because this government is failing to implement and monitor. Stop allowing the citizens of this country to suffer because of this government's lack of political will. Stop paying us lip service. Let's act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, this generation and the generation that follow will suffer the greatest human-induced calamity in history if world leaders collectively do not take drastic action to mitigate the impact of climate change. The onus is on us, as this group of lawmakers, to take every possible step to do our part in mitigation and adapting to the deleterious outcome of humanity's developmental choices. This parliamentary delegation to the 22nd session of Conference of Parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change could have been used to better position our legislative making capacity to prove the country's capacity in dealing with climate change. Instead of our delegation engaging with other countries to find solutions to the global problems of climate change, our own delegation, consisting of mainly ANC people who have no idea what the world is dealing with, use this as an opportunity to loiter around with frolic giving inconsequential talks here and there. Since that conference, the US, under the leadership of their own maniac, have pulled out of the Paris Agreement, threatening to plunge global action on climate change to a crisis mode. Under these conditions, we must defy the sense of hopelessness brought about in our country by our own looting maniac, and take decisive steps towards the global fight against climate change and strive for the implementation of the Paris Agreement. This must include having a law of generation application on climate change, which will bind all government departments to a common approach towards reducing emissions and be an overarching guide to our developmental path. This must also give timelines on complete outlaws of fossil fuels as an energy source and provide a framework for a transition towards renewable energy sources. We support all actions towards bringing the collective strengths of all countries in the world to tackle climate change, but we reject this report and we do not condone the use of imported forums such as these as an opportunities of ANC looters to loiter around using taxpayers' money.
The next speaker is the IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The COP22 that was held in Marrakesh in November of last year focused on action items which would assist in achieving the priorities of the Paris Agreement, and more specifically, to issues related to adaptation, transparency, technology transfer, mitigation, capacity building, and loss and damages. This chairperson was, however, overshadowed, as we know, by the shock withdrawal of the United States from the Paris Agreement on the principal grounds, in President Trump's words of, I quote, "it being a bad deal for the American people," close quote. While President Trump, this has now become a bad deal for the world and the global environment, and we look forward to the United States rapidly reconsidering its position in this regard. Honorable Chairperson, it is imperative that South Africa continue with its efforts and contributions to reducing the effects of climate change. As the Honorable Member from the DA said, a couple of years back, we still had a few climate change detractors claiming that it was a myth, a hoax, conspiracy, and a capitalistic attempt at creating new markets. Today, it is reported that 90% of scientists agree that humanity's current and ever-increasing carbon footprint, which describes the amount of greenhouse gas emissions in our global environment, is reaching critical levels, and reduction measures must be implemented and legislated by all countries if we have to stave off an impending global climate crisis. Air pollution is a global problem, and it is imperative that South Africa take all necessary steps at ensuring that our surrounding environment can accommodate our national carbon footprint. Out of every 3 breaths we take here right now in this House, 2 of those breaths come courtesy of our marine environment. Why are we then so reckless with our ocean management? As a start, we must ensure that through a vehicle like the Marine Spatial Planning Bill, currently before this House, that our marine protected areas are of sufficient size, and we support calls to increase this amount to 10% of our exclusive marine environment. Such basic steps, we believe, are fundamental in creating a sustainable environmental architecture in our country. Let's start with getting the basics right, and the complexity and enormity of the challenge will then not be as daunting and difficult as it now appears to be. Climate change and the effects thereof can be prevented. It does, however, require the necessary political will. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Kubisa.
Chairperson, I'm doing this on behalf of Honourable Shalembe, my colleague. Climate change is the single most common threat to the future existence and survival of humanity. The terrifying reality is that we are not only at the beginning of this global change in climate, that will continue to create havoc in the lives of millions of people. Chairperson, this is a relentless change that will increase in intensity as decades of industrial pollution and environmental abuse reveals the true extent of the damage done to our global environment. And future generations will be the ones to pay the price. Honorable House Chairperson, our government will have to make a paradigm shift in its approach to preparing for the ravages of climate change, which is likely to affect the poorest of the poor most severely. And this needs to be done swiftly. We need a framework act of Parliament to facilitate and drive our efforts to deal with climate change. And of course, we also need to do more than that. We propose as the National Freedom Party that what South Africa needs is an integrated climate change management program which will cut across the divides between government, business, organized labor, and society. It is time to set differences aside when we deal with this matter. We must identify the common challenges posed by climate change and devise a suitable strategy that will take into consideration the immediate challenges as well as the need to adapt to our planning and policies in the long term. Welcome the observation of the committee that a curtain is steadily being drawn on fossil fuels and that the global trend shows a noticeable increase in the proportion of renewable energy in the energy mix of countries. We support the report and we believe that is an important subject, and any attempts by the West to play this superpower role when dealing with this matter does not assist the nations of the world. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chief Whip, orange awubonanga kahle.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any further declarations, the ANC?
Honorable House Chairperson, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Members of Parliament. They are there, you may not see them. If you can't see, don't blame it on me. The African National Congress supports this report as presented. It is worth mentioning that we had a multi-party parliamentary delegation which was part of the country's team to COP22. EFF's allegations are predictable and not surprising because they were not even there. The parties that participated in that conference have adopted this report through their representatives. This is a report aimed at indicating what happened and was achieved for the country regarding combating climate change impacts. The country delegation consisted of persons from various stakeholders and sectors who are affected or have an interest on reducing the effects of climate change in our country, from business, politicians, experts, research institutions, environmental rights, NGOs, etc. We urge the government to coordinate effectively all those who play a role as partners and stakeholders in order to address the concerns raised last year in this regard as we approach COP23. We must also allow those involved to showcase their activities at these international platforms. The ANC wishes to congratulate both DBSA and SAMBI for their appointment as the implementing agents for the Global Climate Fund. It is hoped that they would focus on climate resilience development projects and programs even in rural and most vulnerable areas of the country and the southern region. Recent storms and floods in KZN and eThekwini in particular indicate the extent to which climate change impacts pose disastrous challenges to the country, to which the local government sphere may not adequately be ready to handle. The Climate Adaptation Fund should be utilized to alleviate these challenges as and when they happen. The development of climate-sensitive risk responses projects taking into consideration the social impacts of climate change pertaining to gender and other inequalities. I therefore, on behalf of the ANC, agree and accept the report and hope that the recommendations shall be implemented. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. There were no objections to the report being adopted. The report is thus being adopted. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Labour on Oversight visit to Mpumalanga farms.
I now recognize the chairperson of the committee, the Honourable Loliwe, who will introduce the report.
Thank you, House Chair. I'm here to present the report, which is to update Parliament on some of the work done by the committee as part of its oversight role. As a Portfolio Committee on Labour, we conducted an oversight visit in 5 farms in Mpumalanga from the 15th to 18th September 2015. The objective of the oversight was to monitor compliance to labor legislation, conditions of employment in particular. What we picked up there was that there was a substantial number of employees that were foreign nationals some of which were made supervisors in the various farms. Some of these foreign nationals did not have the required immigrant documents. Most workers' residential places were horrible, and employees were charged for that, in that they were paying rental. Most employees complained about their wages and non-registration in UIF. We singled out 2 farms there, Inyoni Bruderei and Umbaba Farm, because challenges there were such that we had to refer them to the Department of Labor for follow-up, which was done. We appreciate the fact that the provincial government in Mpumalanga, working with the Department of Labor and all stakeholders that are involved, have been following up the matter, especially the case of Umbaba Farm, where about 300 farm workers were dismissed by the employer there. We then proposed as the committee that inspection should be upped a bit in the 2 farms because conditions of service were terrible, and the Department of Labor has to deal decisively with non-compliance. We are also saying countries closer to the borders of South Africa should work with South Africa to ensure that the influx of illegal immigrants to SA is being kept. We then lastly want to land by saying Parliament should take cognizance of the fact that farm workers may not be enjoying the freedom we deem to be having, because the way in which they are treated is a horrible one. I want to land by citing a story where one employer was saying, "I'm treating my employees very well. When a cow dies, I give it to them free of charge." So they are supposed to appreciate that. All parties that were there left those farms frustrated because it was clear the South Africa we are in has not arrived in those farms. That's the report we are tabling. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, House Chair. Again, we move that the report be adopted by this august House.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? There's no objections. The report is agreed to. However, there are requests for declarations. Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, this oversight visit took place so long ago that the details of the visit are fairly vague. However, there are 3 things that stood out for me from this particular visit. One being that it was quite evident that there were connivance between officials of the Food and Allied Workers Union and some officials of the Labour Centre in Malalane, that they conspired against the employees to boost the image and the recruitment potential of the workers. Secondly, there's a lack of capacity at the Malalane Labour Centre, particularly with regard to labour inspectors to effect effective inspections around the district. And thirdly, the high levels of youth unemployment in the Malalane and Nkomazi district. Now, Chair, youth unemployment is not only restricted to those 2 districts. We know it's a South African problem, and it currently stands at 55.6%. Of the 9.3 million South Africans who do not have jobs, over 5 million of those unemployed people are young people. Our Chair, subsequent to our visits, at least 68,000 Mpumalanga residents joined the ranks of the unemployed in 2016. This figure includes 36,000 people that has lost their jobs and 32,000 people who are new entrants in the labour market who couldn't find jobs. Mpumalanga's youth contribute significantly to this number, as some are forced to stay at home with qualifications because there are no opportunities. The increase in unemployment can be seen as a failure of the ANC's incoherent, inconsistent, and sometimes unconstitutional economic policies. Yesterday, the Minister of Finance, in his speech, used the word must 48 times. Not once did he mention or provide any house. We are faced with economic crisis in the country, and no solutions were provided as to how we're going to get ourselves out of this mess. It is clear that the governing party is struggling to create a conducive environment that will create employment opportunities for both unemployed and new entrants to the labor market. A DA government will create an environment for growth and job creation. The DA will assist small businesses to gain access to capital and to grow their businesses to create jobs, particularly those in our townships. Our Chair, this report before us lists a number of problems faced by farm workers. No doubt those problems must be addressed. The department was given 3 months subsequent to the report to respond to those problems that were identified. Sadly, I must say, nothing came of it. The only feedback the committee received was a letter stating that 2 cases are with the CCMA for resolution. That was way back in 2015. The department needs to stop making recommendations and start taking actions. It is clear that the ANC government does not care about farm workers. Otherwise, it would not have taken them more than 2 years to table this report. This report is so outdated that we have to schedule another oversight visit to the area in order to ascertain ourselves with the true state of affairs. I can assure you that in all likelihood, the conditions have not improved. We as a Democratic Alliance will aim to improve the working conditions of farm workers and the challenges faced by farmers. House Chair, South Africa is a country of countless opportunities and possibilities. Our people, and especially our youth, needs to be given hope that tomorrow will be better than today, that their parents' sacrifices and pain of the past will not be in vain, that their children and grandchildren will have a better future. Come 2019, they will vote for a new beginning, a DA-led government ensuring freedom, fairness, and opportunities for all South Africans. Our Chair, the Democratic Alliance support the adoption of the report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The EFF.
The common thing with all these oversights, including this one of Mpumalanga, the farm workers are staying in properties of farm owners on condition that they are rendering cheap labor to farm owners. The farm workers are subjected to exploitation by farm owners. They are paid below the controversial minimum wage of 20 rand, sponsored by Mr. Ramaphosa, which is further stuck for farm workers and domestic workers below the 20 rand, between 12 rand and 16 rand per hour respectively. Sometimes these farm workers are paid with bag of meal and cheap alcohol as a condition of their stay in these farms as cheap laborers. Farm workers do not enjoy the rights enshrined in the basic conditions of employment. They are working irregular hours, which are between 9 and 10 hours, and 45, 50 hours without being paid overtime in a week. They are paid between 1,600 and 2,000 a month. This is the indignity that our people enjoys in the hands of unscrupulous farm owners. Farm workers do not enjoy basic rights such as access to adequate ablution services such as toilet, water, and showers. Women that are farm workers are forced to help themselves in the field together with men. These poor women, of which some are married, are vulnerable to abuse and rape from the same farm owners due to these working conditions.
All this is happening in the presence of Department of Labor Inspectorate Services. The inspectors are charged with the responsibility to monitor and inspect compliance of farm owners with basic labor rights of workers, such as working hours and safety, employment equity and skills development. However, the inspectors, either they do not do their job or not enforcing the findings. This is despite the inherent limitation of the inspection services, which relates to capacity constraints. The department lacks capacity in terms of personnel provision, skills deficiency amongst the morale of staff is low due to lack of leadership and poor remuneration. All this affects directly the poor workers. The immediate solution is to change patterns of ownership in these farms to give expression of farm workers as co-owners of land. This will assist to address the imbalances of the past in terms of ownership patterns. This could only be done when sanity prevails to all members of parliament as legislatures to amend the constitution, the property clause section 25 to give expression of expropriation of land without compensation. This is the second pillar of the economic freedom fighters, that only when land is expropriated without compensation finds expression in our own constitution, we could resolve the challenges facing the farm workers in South Africa. We call this parliament to exhaust its thinking capacity and further tap to the superior logic of the EFF and pass laws that will force the ownership of land by the state and ownership of profit margin by the farm workers. This will end the perpetual exploitation of our own workers. The EFF supports the recommendation. So,
the IFP.
Thank you, Chairman. Having been requested to do this presentation only during this morning, I've decided to concentrate a little more.
Order, honourable members.
On the structural challenges faced by farm workers and what their children face daily. How successful is the implementation of new legislation such as the sectoral determination that has been put into place? Farming for food production is a tough job, both for the farm owner and the farm worker. Farm workers face challenges such as poor working and living conditions and always very important farm school education. The children must walk to schools, being taught in multi-grade classrooms, receiving low-quality education. Farms mostly have become multinational corporations through acquisitions, and farm workers have had to adjust. Some farm workers have now become stakeholders and have a say in their children's education. But there are many challenges still faced by the farm workers today. For example, unemployment and the employment of cheap labor from Mozambique and other countries, as well as illnesses, housing, work security, training and career growth and wages. Chairperson, currently farm and farm owners are closely monitored to inform the policy makers, members of legislature and delegates and other stakeholders on the working and living conditions of farm workers. And the department is continuing playing a role in regulating and providing guidelines for the employment condition of farm workers and their families. But having said that, the responses were varied from farm to farm in this report, a concern that I share, and that many farm children do not receive quality education or drop out of school at a very young age or migrate to nearby towns. These are harsh realities and daily experiences of children who grow up on farms. Already their destiny in life has been decided. Most do not have the opportunity as children in villages, townships, or suburbs. And through this department, I hope we can ensure that they have a brighter future ahead of them. I thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. The NFP.
Chairperson, in spite of the fact that this report has taken too long to be presented to this House, the National Freedom Party notes that there is still a lot of neglect and undermining of the Labour Relations Act. And the workers in farms are still exploited at the extreme. Issues of less pay, whereas the department should have been doing this, and it's a pity that from 1994 to date, things are not well in farms. Farm workers may work long hours, yet they are paid less. And of course, what is also observed is that there are labor inspectors, but seemingly they become reactive. They don't do their work, they don't investigate what is happening in farms in terms of compliance. It is therefore recommended that inspectors should do their work all the time and ensure that compliance is really done in farms. Also, it is not acceptable at this time and age, and we see it as dehumanization, Chairperson, that farm workers will work for food parcels. And of course, their socio-economic conditions are not taken into cognizance. Schools are not in good state. Some of the farm schools are dilapidated and they don't have the necessary resources, lack of clinics, and lack of proper toilets, etc., water and sanitation. So these are the issues that bear to the fact that there's still a lot of dehumanization in farms. And also, Chairperson, the fact that most farm workers complain that their jobs are being taken by the foreign nationals. And the NFP is of the view that this Department of Labor, must ensure that there is a strong partnership between it and the Department of Home Affairs to ensure that whilst we need scarce skills, but these foreign immigrants must have the necessary documentation in order for them to work within the farms. So these are issues that we are bringing to the fore, Chairperson, and we support the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. I know it's very strange for me that one honorable member can say that this visit has been conducted so far that he can't remember what happened. But it's very fresh in our minds because we think back about the bad working conditions on those farms that many of our workers were subjected to. We know that some of and many of the employers are doing their part, but there's also a lot of the employers that are still practicing exploitative practices in the sector of the vulnerable workers and bad working and living conditions, where in some cases, Honorable Chairperson, one small room is occupied by more than 10 workers, and they're supposed to do everything in that room. And they are not being paid according to the relevant legislations, and nothing is being said about it. And we notice that there's a total disregard for relevant existing labor legislations, especially in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and the relevant safety and health regulations. And some employers are totally ignoring it. We had a lot of disputes there, and we need to give some background in terms of what happened at Umbaba Farm. Some of the workers realized in 2014, Honorable Chairperson, that they totally not handled correctly by the employers, and then they tried to join the firewood trade union. But as a result of that, they embarked on a protected strike when they were informed of the rights that they have, and then they embarked on a strike. But afterwards, Honorable Chairperson, it was very bad to note that they were dismissed. More than 300 workers were dismissed because they embarked on their rights, on that strike, to claim for their rights. This dispute is currently handled by the CCMA. As the ANC, in that study group, we're continuously following up the plight of that workers in that area because we are feeling for those workers. And currently it's been handled by the CCMA as being prioritized. But the farmer tries to play delaying tactics by referring the case to the labor court, and it's still there. And we know that currently the problem that those workers are faced with is that the lawyers of FAO withdraw, and hence these workers are still unemployed at the current conjuncture. We recognize, Honorable Chairperson, that we really have a problem in terms of necessary labor and staffing in terms of the Inspectorate of the Department of Labor. And we realize that with the 1,392 labor inspectors, they are not enough to perform the relevant duties as we would like
Honorable
them to.
Member, will you just take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honorable Member?
Honourable Chairperson, will the member take a question as to who's responsible for fixing these
Honorable,
problems?
no, don't ask the question. Honorable Member, are you prepared to take a question?
No, Chairperson.
The member is not prepared to take a question. Please proceed, Honorable
That's so
Member.
typical, Chairperson.
Chairperson, we recognize that currently we have 835 inspectors below the required international standard for the economy of our size. And yes, indeed, that's why we're recommending continuously that more and more funds should be injected to ensure that we employ more staff and more inspectors in this area. But the truth, Honorable Chairperson, however, is that employees should also try to be true to the cause of the needy and the poor workers in these vulnerable sectors and ensure that they treat the employees with dignity and according to their real value instead of advancing their capitalistic ideals. They too have a role to play in ensuring that there's a better life for all and not strictly placing it on the doorstep of the governing party, because we know that many of the people who are the employers in these areas, they are capitalists and they don't care about the plight of the workers. And that's why they employ foreigners, and that's why they exploit those foreigners at the expense of low and no skilled workers that are unemployed in South Africa. And we know, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Member, will you just take your seat? Why are you rising, Honorable Member?
Take a question about who's foreigners in the country.
Honorable Member, you first ask if the Honorable Member will take a question, then I'll ask her before you put the question. Honorable Member, are you prepared to take a question?
No, Honorable Chairperson, the reality is what makes it difficult for us to accept, but we need to go to those workplaces and we need to be, as public office bearers, we need to be firm on the ground, because some of us, Honorable Chairperson, as employers in our own homes, we are also practicing exploitative practices, and we need to start there before we look forward. And hence, Honorable Chairperson, we are urging all workers out there to make themselves aware of the relevant rights that's protecting them, that's been enshrined in the relevant labor legislation, to ensure that they are protected and to ensure that they go to the Department of Labor's offices and go and expose these employees that's exploiting them. And really there are a lot of structures in place like the CCMA who's also doing their part, and they're doing an excellent job as long as we take note of this and we make use of the officers and the officials that are there. We know that this life can be a better life for all of us. And as our chairperson indeed said, that some employees are still not free. It is as if they are left behind in an apartheid era, and that's not what we envisage. And hence, we are asking all honorable members to play their part in ensuring that indeed everyone is free. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, there were no objections to the report. I will now ask the Secretary to read the sixth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises on Oversight visit to community of Soweto.
I now call upon the Honorable Ranto, who will introduce the report.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and to the honorable members of Parliament. The Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprise undertook an oversight visit to the community of Soweto late in March 2017. Our delegation included the honorable members Litsatsi Duba, Tsedi, Nobanda, Mazone, Singh, Kwangwa, and me. We were accompanied by 4 parliamentary officials. This oversight visit was prompted by the receipt of 3 petitions submitted to the National Assembly by Honorable Mhlongo, DAMP, on behalf of the communities of Soweto. It is unfortunate, Chairperson, that I must report and share with you and the House that Mr. Mhlongo organized a DA members of that communities to disturb our meetings because the initial visit was to meet leaders and representatives, and he organized his constituency. Now he wants to be paid by Parliament money for sound system, which we did not budget for as the committee, because he organized that sound system to campaign for himself in a committee oversight, and that is disgusting, Honorable Chair. Late in 2015 and early in 2016, the residents
Honorable
of
Ranto,
Phase 1.
Honorable Ranto, will you just take your seat? Honorable Member, why are you rising?
Thank you, House Chairperson. Chairperson, on a point of order, if the member has anything to say about another member of this House, can she bring it in the form of a substantive motion? And will she withdraw that remark, please, House Chair? Thank you.
No, honorable order, honorable members. Honorable members, while it's accurate to refer to what happened during the oversight visits, if there are any implications or if there could be any accusations of wrongdoing on the part of any particular member, then we request a substantive motion in that regard. Continue, honorable member.
The pensioners demanded that ESCOM must grant senior citizens 100% rebates on electricity. They also requested accurate billing and cancellation of debts after 3 years. The main purpose of the visit was to interact with ESCOM and the community in order to find solutions to the issue raised. Furthermore, the committee wished to report on how the community's petition had been processed. ESCOM claimed that it had consulted broadly and extensively on the matters raised by the residents. Consultations were held with the MMC, councillors and community leaders, but not with the general community. According to ESCOM, the residents by the community was due to the fact that the people were against the principle of prepaid electricity. As a result, the debt of electricity in Soweto was rising monthly and stood at 8 billion rand with interest. ESCOM had fallen far short of its target for installing prepaid electricity meters as a result of the resistance from the community and the demands that the utility felt were unreasonable, such as a flat rate which could not be implemented in one community. There were disputes about the rollout programs of prepaid meters, which the community felt were imposed on them. While ESCOM believed that there had been sufficient consultation, residents also questioned the modus operandi of the municipality and ESCOM, and they claimed that they had been deprived their right to access to free basic electricity, particularly the indigents. There was agreement that pensioners should not be afforded to settle their historical debt, and ESCOM also advised them to desist from buying electricity from illegal vendors. Residents were also informed of an expanded social package that would cater for senior citizens. The committee also made a number of recommendations to resolve the impasse. These included improvement of communication and consultation by ESCOM, collaboration between ESCOM and the city to update the indigent register, collective responsibility to educate residents about ESCOM's program, and finding other sustainable ways to recover the debt without negative impact in the livelihoods of communities, as well as finding long-term solutions. In my conclusion, Chairperson, the committee encouraged community members who can afford to pay, they must pay the electricity. For electricity, they must pay for the electricity, and those who are indigent to be registered and given a subsidy. The committee will further conduct public engagement with Soweto to provide feedback to the community. The committee placed this report to be considered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, House Chair. We move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Chairperson?
Are there any objections? There's
Yes.
no. Is there an objection?
Yes.
There's a request for declarations as well. The Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, once again we see how the truth hurts. Instead of commending Honourable Tsepo Matlongo for actually doing his job as an MP and making sure that a petition that was brought to him by the residents of his constituency comes to Parliament and receives the attention, the ANC do nothing but lambaste him. That is what I call disgusting, Chairperson. Let me tell you that it was quite an interesting occurrence. The whole process was organised in such a haphazard and disorganised way that had Honourable Matlongo not organised a sound system in the venue himself, we certainly wouldn't have been able to hear the concerns of the residents, which we know was done deliberately. So hats off to Councillor Matlongo, and may a lot of people, rather Honourable Matlongo, and may a lot of people follow your brilliant example of what it means to be an MP and a servant of the people. Even more appalling, my friends, is when we were in this Oversight Committee, the police arrived. Why? Because residents of the community started becoming rather upset with the ANC's attitude towards them. So instead of dealing with the public, the ANC has always run scared of their own people and called in the police. Interesting. Honourable Matlongo and I had to go outside and ask the police to leave because the ANC members of the committee were inside hovering in fear because they are scared of what they've done to their own people. It was Honourable Matlongo who stood up for the people of Soweto and made sure that their voices were heard, not the members of the ANC, and shame on them for that. In the dead of night, colleagues, in the dead of night, Eskom arrived and put in prepaid meters that in many instances didn't work. In many instances, when people loaded their prepaid electricity onto the meter halved the amount of electricity that was put on. So it is shameful to make it sound like in any way these prepaid meters had done this community any sort of favours. It was made very clear to us that no one expected free electricity to be given to them. Yes, they wanted free basic services to which they are entitled, but everyone said that if things had just been explained to them, they would have known how to budget for the month ahead. But no, of course not. Eskom nor the ANC took any time to explain to residents what had happened, and people went to bed one night with electricity and woke up the next morning with no electricity. Now, if you aren't scared of a community, why do you go in the dead of night when everyone's asleep if you've got nothing to hide? Chair, I have no words, actually, following what Honourable Rantu said, except to say, we are servants of the people. It is our job to make sure that the voice of the people is always heard. South Africans must always come first. And if anything that this oversight did teach us, it taught us the importance of petitions and making sure you fight for the communities that you represent. And it taught us the importance of proper oversight, because yet again, the ANC failed the people, Eskom failed the people, and the ANC did nothing to help better the lives of South Africans. Honourable Matlongo, I take my hat off to you for making sure that the people of your constituency had their voices heard in Parliament.
Thank you. EFF.
House Chair, what Eskom is doing to our people in Soweto and other townships and rural areas of forcing prepaid meters is a classic World Bank and IMF discredited case of public squeeze prior to private profiting and corruption. As early as 1996, World Bank and IMF models of cost recovery strategies of basic service simply cannot work in a country where 9.3 million people cannot find job, 30 million people live in poverty on less than 1,000 rand per month and live in terrible conditions. To demand and to expect the poor and the pensioner and unemployed to buy prepaid electricity when they cannot afford to buy food or put roof over their heads is a sophisticated way of denying them access to electricity. It is to deny them such a basic human right, a right which without is a tantamount to say people must live like animals in the dark. What is extremely concerning is the fact that over the 20 years, ESCOM has failed to maintain electricity infrastructure, failed to add all households to the grid in an affordable and sustainable manner. But mostly, it is the corruption and the collapse of governance at the ESCOM that have seen the drastic increase in electricity tariffs because corruption is very expensive. But to Soweto, as informal institution, Mikukuni, abakuwana mdagasi wo fanela one wakono ruba tuse. Rinesa EFF, ekori kido jana muso nga 1919, 2019 EFF the make sure but one mdagasi wa mahara. Thank you.
Ralevoa. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, when we present these reports, my understanding is that the chairperson or the acting chairperson who presents a report on behalf of the committee. And then the ANC will have another speaker later on. But now in this report, which I had a look, Honorable Kwankwa will bring it through, there's no mention of Honorable Mhlongo's ulterior motives. So I think it should not have been part of the report presented to Parliament because it's not written in the report. But it can be a view expressed by the ANC member, and we've got no problem with that. Having said that, Chairperson, this was a community interaction that arose from petitions received regarding the planned ESCOM installation of prepaid electricity meters, as we've heard. We were advised that ESCOM had failed to respond to residents' petition in the matter, nor conducted any kind of public education seminars before the summary installation of prepaid meters in the areas of Deep Kloof and Orlando. ESCOM itself conceded in the meeting that I was there on the first day that it did not have consultations in this matter with the general communities, and we now have a situation of a community at odds with their principal supply of electricity, and this leads to illegality, such as in the form of illegal and unsafe connections being made by residents to high voltage wiring. And we know, honorable members and chairperson, that electrocutions due to illegal connections are commonplace, and there's a danger to small children, and it's life-threatening. Cables lie on the streets, and unsafe connections are made from informal dwellings from formal to informal dwellings. Our community members must be informed and educated on the dangers of tampering with high-voltage electricity supply boxes, and ESCOM must speed up formal electricity supplies delivery to these areas, as these illegal electricity connections, besides being lethal to any soul unfortunate to come into contact with them, additionally affect the quality of electricity supply. I have personally seen, Honorable Chairperson and Speaker, people who actually manage lines that come from electricity poles to informal settlements, and they collect a fee. Each one is in charge of a particular line and they collect a fee. And I've even seen them have fights with each other because they say, this is my line to 10 houses and that is your line. So we must stop that kind of thing. And Honorable Chairperson, while we wax lyrical, some members come here and wax lyrical of the number of houses that have been electrified since democracy, and we agree there have been a number. Real challenges continue to exist, and not least of all, the high cost of electricity that's imposed by ESCOM. If ESCOM, as we go through this inquiry, stop stealing the kind of money that they've been stealing and giving it to people, then electricity would be cheaper in this country. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. When we look at the representation made and reported on, it's evident that what happened in Diepsloot and Orlando West is not a simple matter. A complex set of interrelated factors have combined to give rise to a situation where the community and state-sponsored provider of services are at loggerheads. We should not underestimate the implications of this situation, for if the problem is not solved, it holds serious consequences for the future rollout and provision of electricity to our poor communities. Chairperson, the National Freedom Party believes that for service delivery to succeed in South Africa, all stakeholders should cooperate, join hands in both dialogue and actions. It would be an oversimplification to suggest that the problems in Soweto are caused solely by ESCOM lack of consultation or communication with the community. At the same time, however, Chairperson, we cannot deny that this omission by ESCOM has contributed largely to the problem. Yet on the other hand, the report reveals a community who had not been empowered with information, a community which is faced with uncertainty, and above all, a community steeped in poverty who can barely afford electricity. It is a community that needs to be assisted to get electricity. And viewing this, and in the light of billions of rands being squandered at ESCOM, we say, Chairperson, ESCOM must step up the game. In the light of the complexity of the problem facing Diepsloot and Orlando West communities, the NFP welcomes the comment made in the report. In particular, we're encouraged by the balanced apportionment of obligations and duties distributed among the stakeholders, which transcend the correlationship between the community and ESCOM and brings on board government departments which have a valuable input to make. We believe as National Freedom Party that these recommendations, if implemented, will go a long way to resolving the competing but mutually compelling demands and needs of the community, ESCOM and the departments. Thank you very much. We support the report. Thank you.
Thank you. UDM?
We will have to, Chairperson, we will have to edit out the part where the Chairperson made reference to Honorable Mhlongo and said Honorable Mhlongo had mobilized members of the Democratic Alliance in that meeting. Ebezo introduce a report committee kaloku. Chairperson Sumosh, Mabngahwan. Says we are going to speech say ANC later on uthethe ne Democratic Alliance. We must indeed commend Honorable Mhlongo for the initiative he took. Ngokuthi azama uqinisekisa ukuthi izikhalazo zabantu ziyeza ngaphambili. But I think what is important is that one of the issues besithetha ngazo nangalamini nabahlali, what featured prominently, especially in the inputs that were made by the community members, was the fact that ESCOM did not consult enough on issues as dibene as prepaid meters. And in many instances, bebez forcer because bebehamba ne-law enforcement agencies. Zandi ibone mna into ba uthi uzothengisela product ufakelwe ne-law enforcement agencies. But you see, a lot of things that are happening at ESCOM they defy logic. For an example, yesterday I was listening to the Minister of Finance saying, for an example, in the past we had a shortage of energy supply, now we have an overcapacity problem, but the price hasn't come down. Right? Under normal circumstances, the demand is supply. Once in you demand is the price must go down and then you reach a new equilibrium. But yeah, because the price doesn't come down because we must subsidize the mass seller, and that's the problem. The issue that we spoke about and made sure that cited prominently, we said, one which is captured accurately in the report of the committee, we said we must address, ESCOM must address the issue of a lack of consultation and where there was no communication regarding the conversion to prepaid meters. On that particular day, by the way, I come to a skipper said Democratic Alliance for us to be sure that it was the DA that mobilized Abantu Bayo to go and disrupt the meeting there. ANC, yeah, xa ingazange ikwazi umobilize abantu bayo lo tyala lethu elo. Nidla nanenze loo nto kwi-info bill apha neza nabantu benu nayityhala le nto nisenza into ezingekhoyo apha njengesiqhelo lamasela. The other issue which is important here is that as we conclude, I made this very clear. I said what we must not do and what we must guard against is creating Soweto exceptionalism. We must address this problem so that abantu base Soweto bazokwazi ukubhatala umbane like the rest of us and make sure that abo who fall under the indigent policy banikwa i-rates zabo ezisimahla per month so that we don't create this perception because the ANC has failed to tackle this matter properly for years that there is a Soweto exceptionalism. I think that is important. We support the report, edit out the other part that talks about the DA and Mhlongo.
ANC?
Enkosi Sihlalo. Sihlalo, I-ANC
Order, honorable members, order.
i-ANC iyayisupporta le report eze apha. Mna bendithetha ngezinto ezenzeke ngalamini phaya kwezantlanganiso ebesinazo nabantu baseSoweto. I-ANC iyazithoba kubantu baseSoweto ibacenga okokuba abantu baseSoweto mabahlawule imali yombane. Abo bakwaziyo ukuhlawula umbane mabawuhlawule. Urhulumente we-ANC unalo icebo okanye unayo iplani anayo ayenzele abantu abangathathi ntweni. I-area ebesiye kuyo eSoweto yindawo apho kuhlala khona abantu abaphangelayo. Bambalwa abantu abazi-pensioners abahleli phayana futhi i-ANC ayinaze yoyiswe ukulungiselela abo bantu. Sihlalo, cela le report yamkelwe.
Siyabonga. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? In light of the objections will be...
Chairperson, the DA calls for division.
The division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
Chair, what are we waiting for now? Are we waiting for people from offices? Can we?
Order, honorable members. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button. Can we have order, please? If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as the member's vote when the voting session is closed by the chairperson. Order. The question before the House is that the report of the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises be adopted. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the report should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have you all voted? Thank you. The voting session is now closed.
Sorry, Chairperson, we have one member that couldn't vote because he's not registered yet. Can we just register his name?
Okay. Can we get the name they're asking? Rainy. Thank you very much. The results are as follows. Abstain 0. The noes is 65. The yes 111. The report is accordingly agreed to and adopted. Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Order. We now come to motions without notice. Any member of the ANC wish to give a motion without notice? Member of the ANC wish to give? Okay, order, members.
I was still in my...
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. The ANC move without notice that the House notes with sadness the death of more than 40 people and injury of more than 60 people following tragic fires ravaging parts of Portugal and Spain from Sunday, the 14th of October 2017. Understand that the fires had blazed across northern Portugal throughout the weekend before spreading across the border into Spain. Further understand that many roads and schools in Galicia were closed, with several schools used as shelters for those affected by fires. Recalls that Portugal has been plagued with the largest wave of fires since 2006. Further recalls that the latest fires follow the heels of the summer blaze 4 months ago that claimed 64 lives in one night. Acknowledges that the rain and lower temperatures on Tuesday, the 16th of October 2017, helped emergency teams bring under control most of the wildfires and extend its deepest condolences to the Republic of Portugal and to those who lost their loved ones in the catastrophic event. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections, agreed to. DA?
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that the DA-led City of Tshwane is setting the example for merit-based appointment in policing by Mayor Solly Mpumalanga's nomination of an experienced career police officer to be the next permanent Tshwane Metro Police Chief. Further notes that ensuring fit-for-purpose leadership with the correct priorities that gets the basics right and enforces strong accountability is the foundation for a professional and effective police service. Acknowledges that the recently released crime stats showing continued increases in violent and organized crimes show the desperate need for the professionalization of the police service. Further acknowledges that the Mpumalanga administration has made significant progress in its fight against crime through such reforms as the establishment of an anti-drug specialized unit. Congratulates Mayor Mpumalanga for his efforts to build a professionally led Metro Police service that the people of Tshwane can have more trust in. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion?
Yes, Chairperson, ANC rejects the motion.
Then the motion, having been rejected, the motion will be converted to a notice of a motion. EFF?
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of EFF that the House notes that Sibongile Ndashe and 12 others were arrested by the Tanzanian police, and that many of those she was arrested with are activists and South African citizens. Further notes that Sibongile Ndashe and others held a meeting in order to find ways to import particular health services for HIV patients in Tanzania. Acknowledges that Tanzanian authorities raided their meeting, arresting all present under the pretext that they were promoting homosexuality. Further acknowledged that this is a gross violation of human rights and the rights of South African citizens, and that no South African citizen should ever be arrested unjustly. Realizes that their arrest is betrayal of a vision of decolonized Africa. The African unity and the quest for equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people all over the world. And urges the South African government to immediately ensure that Sibongile Ndashe and 12 others are released. I so move.
Thank you. Do we have any objections to the motion? No objection, agreed to. ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. In relation to the celebration of the International Teachers' Day, the ANC moves without notice that this House notes that the 5th of October is annually recognized as the International Teachers' Day. Further notes that this year's celebration was held under the theme, Teaching in Freedom, Empowering Teachers. Thirdly, recalls that this theme echoes the 2015 theme that followed the adoption of the new Sustainable Development Goals, where teacher empowerment was reaffirmed as a top priority in all education and development strategies of the United Nations. Fourthly, believes that the empowerment of teachers is paramount as it promotes the importance of education and good values to the learners. Calls upon the South Africans to honor and value all teachers' immense contribution and dedication to deliver quality education. And lastly, hope that all teachers had a happy Teachers' Day on the said day. I so move, House Chair.
Thank you. Any objections to the motion? No objections, agreed to. IFP?
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move without notice that the House 1 notes that the plastic pellet spill referred to as nurdles along the KZN coastline, which threatens marine life, further notes that the nurdle spill currently stretches over more than 300 kilometers of KwaZulu-Natal shoreline, is likely to spread as far south as Port Elizabeth and north in Mozambique, acknowledges that the nurdles currently spread from Richards Bay in the north to Trafalgar on the south, and residents of KwaZulu-Natal's coastal towns were urged to rally in efforts to rid the beaches of billions of nurdles spilled in the Durban storm, further acknowledges that the nurdles are a monumental problem because the worn-down fragments block filter feeders and clog respiratory gills, and if they contain additives, then the toxicological aspects will take a toll along the food chains, recognizes that there is a cleanup initiative involving civil society organizations, Plastic South Africa and Coast KZN Portal, which is managed by the Oceanographic Research Institute, and finally, calls on government departments and other civil society organizations to offer their assistance in this regard, and to those already involved to remain steadfast in their efforts to put into action the cleanup initiative and help restore marine life. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections, agreed to. NFP?
House Chairperson, on behalf of the National Freedom Party, I move without notice that this House take note that the two distinguished South African scientists and leading HIV researchers, Professor Salim Abdul Karim and Professor Quraisha Abdul Karim, have been named as the recipients of the esteemed International Lifetime Achievement Award by the Institute for Human Virology. Also note that the award acknowledges the exceptional public service to the two scientists delivered through their contributions to the global AIDS response, and in particular for the landmark CAPRISA 004 study, which sought to develop a safe and technological advanced way for women to protect themselves from HIV infection. Finally, notes that Professor Salim Abdul Karim is currently the director of the Center for the AIDS Program of Research in South Africa, known as CAPRISA. And Professor Quraisha Abdul Karim is an associate scientific director. Wherefore, we call upon this honorable House to congratulate Professor Salim and Quraisha Abdul Karim on the prestigious award, and to thank them for the important contribution they are making in the fight against HIV/AIDS, and finally to encourage them to continue with the resilience and vigor in their quest to find new ways and means to combat HIV/AIDS. I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections, agreed to. ANC?
The ANC notes with sadness the death of an activist and former teacher at Trafalgar High School, Polly Slingers, on Monday, 16th October 2017, at the age of 91. Understands that Mr. Slingers is recognized as one of the highly regarded educators to have graced Cape Town's teaching profession. Further remembers he was a teacher during the turbulence in 1950s and the 60s, who went far beyond simply trying to impact knowledge, beyond trying to impart knowledge. Recalls that he was an unrelenting revolutionary for truth and justice, a true giant and an untainted humanitarian. Further recalls him as the most committed and fearless member of the then Teachers League of South Africa, an organization aligned to the non-European unity movement, later to be renamed the New Unity Movement. Recognizes that even though it was difficult to teach freely during the apartheid days, Mr. Slingers was able to navigate these difficult waters and instill in the learners a love of history and an appreciation of the role played by South Africans in the troubles and triumphs of the past. Understands that Mr. Slingers had a great influence on many activists in the Western Cape province, such as Basil February, James Marsh, James April, Tilly Abrahams, and many others, and conveys its condolence to his family and friends.
Thank you very much. Is there any objections? No objections, agreed to. UDM?
Chair, I move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes that a third-year South African black engineering student from the University of Cape Town has made a more affordable system that can help to mitigate the devastating effects and impact of the current water shortages in South Africa, in particular in the Western Cape. Believing that the much affordable system for harvesting, storing, and purifying grey water from bathrooms, shower, bathtub, and basin will reduce a household's water bill, since the cost of irrigation and toilet flushing will be transferred to the newly invested system. Appalled by the fact that Nkosinathi Ngomo had to suffer financial exclusion from the University of Cape Town, which resulted in him missing the 2017 academic year. Celebrates his resilience, notwithstanding the devastating reality of being financially excluded from an institution of higher learning, as he was not discouraged by this. Instead, he turned the situation around into a success through this system. Further, believing that there's much more that still needs to be done in higher education sector to ensure that it is accessible to all, in particular the historically disadvantaged groups. Calls on government, local authorities, and citizens to support Aquarenew and to invest in meaningful projects such as the grey water system in order to unlock the potential of the youth in South Africa, and recognizes the need to provide more funding for South African innovations in the research which will help the country to achieve greater autonomy from foreign market forces.
Ungasaqhubeki. Sengikuphe isikhathi esiningi.
Hayi ngalamasela la niphaza. I so move.
Siyathokoza. Any objections? No objections, agreed to. Let me remind everybody who will be doing a motion without notice, you have 1 minute, 30 seconds. I've been very lenient with all of you. So this one was over. Thank you. FF plus, not here. GA?
Thank you. I move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that the renowned South African and Mpumalanga-born artist Esther Mahlangu was recently honored with a boulevard and mural in her honor in New York City. Also notes that the mural spans a 2-lane road in downtown New York and showcases the instantly recognizable underbelly patterns, arts, and designs that have become synonymous with her works. Further notes that for 28 years, Esther has been showcasing her artwork around the world, and acknowledges that Esther's colorful and geometric designs have inspired artists across the globe and have showcased South Africa's colorful cultures. Acknowledges that Esther, who has been painting since she was a child, remains passionate about South Africa, her roots, and her humble beginnings, and congratulates Esther Mahlangu on the recognition bestowed on her internationally and the great pride she brings to all of South Africa. I so move.
Sithokoze. Bakhona abaphikisana naloku? Abekho, siyaqhubeka, ivumelekile. EFF?
I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters that the House one notes that tomorrow, 209 years ago, slaves in what was then known as the Cape embarked on the first mass slave rebellion in South African history. We, the current generation of fighters, draw inspiration from their sacrifice and commitment to human emancipation, and will continue their struggle by fulfilling our generational mission of economic freedom in our lifetime for Africa, workers, and the poor. It is the Khoi and San people who started the long resistance of South Africans to racist and imperial political, economic, and social domination. Acknowledge that their sacrifice was not in vain. Celebrate more the 350 years of African resistance against colonial and economic domination and exploitation. I so move.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections? Gian, Die motie is daaroor ondersteun. Dank u. ANC.
The ANC moves without notice, House Chair, that this August House congratulates Professor Bongani Mayosi, the Dean of Faculty of Health Sciences at UCT, for his election to the U.S. National Academy of Medicine. Two, notes that the National Academy of Medicine, formerly known as the Institute of Medicine, was established in 1970 under the Charter of the National Academy of Sciences to advise on medical and health issues. Realizes that election to the Academy is considered one of the highest honors in the fields of health and medicine, and recognizes individuals who have demonstrated outstanding professional achievement and commitment to service. Understands that without being elected, being elected, one being the elected one one has to commit himself herself to volunteer his or her services to the NAM's aspiration to encourage education and research. Fifthly, believes that Professor Bongani Mayosi is up to the task and will contribute immensely to the required research and knowledge needed to take forward the works of the U.S. National Academy of Medicine. And lastly, congratulate the Professor Mayosi and wishes him much success in his new position of responsibility. We so move, House Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. COPE, not here. ACDP, not here. ANC?
By the time I get my salary. House Chair, I move on behalf of the ANC that this August House, one, notes that Dr. Nothemba Simelela, a top South African obstetrician, was appointed to the World Health Organization's new leadership team. Secondly, believes that with her experience and vast knowledge, she would add value and be an asset to the World Health Organization. Thirdly, further believes that she will discharge her responsibilities in a team environment with distinction and made the country proud by flying the South African flag in an international arena. And lastly, wishes her everything of the best and good luck in her new position of responsibility. I so move, House Chair.
Thank you. Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. AIC, ni hier nie. Agang SA, ni hier nie. ANC?
ANC moves without notice that the House notes that South African swimmer Chadley Loss and Cameron van der Berg have made the country proud by winning 9 medals at the 5th leg of the final World Cup series in Doha on Wednesday, the 4th October and the 5th October 2017. Further notes that Chadley Loss won 6 medals, 4 gold and 2 silver, while Cameron van der Berg brought home 2 gold medals. Believes that with the fitness and sterling performance, these 2 athletes will do wonders at the last 3 legs of the lucrative World Cup series, which will be held in Beijing, Tokyo, and Singapore next month. Wishes them well in their last lucrative World Cup series next month. So I so move.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. APC, Abeko. PAC, Abeko. Oh. I'm sorry, ngithe APC Abeko bakhona net abana motion. Ngiyaxolisa. PAC, Abeko. DA?
Ikona, Chair.
Yabo.
I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes with concern that 76 municipal-owned wastewater treatment plants in Mpumalanga are currently polluting fresh water sources all over the province, as indicated by the MEC of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Refilwe Mtsweni. Also notes that of the 88 water treatment plants in the province, only 12 that are owned by the Department of Public Works, Roads and Transport received Green Drop standard compliancy. Further notes that communities across the province are at risk of contracting waterborne diseases caused by the sewage that is being dumped into the freshwater sources by municipalities. Recognizes that the Constitution under Section 24 guarantees everyone the right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, calls on the MEC to ensure that a wastewater compliance program is implemented in all the municipalities to ensure that valuable fresh water is no longer polluted, condemns all actions whereby residents of Mpumalanga and of South Africa at large are denied their rights to a clean environment, commits itself to continually monitor this dire situation as there is no life without water. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. Agreed to. ANC?
The ANC moves without notice that this August House knows that the Kensington Choral Girls Choir won a gold award for the best prescribed song and the best overall title for the community choir in South Africa in their section at the 80 kV Animator Choral Competition in Johannesburg on Sunday, the 1st of October, 2017. Secondly, further notes that the 80 kV Animator Choral Competition has categories including the youth, community, and chamber choirs, and the Kensington Choral Girls Choir took part in the community section. Thirdly, recalls that the 27-member choir from the Malay community of Cape Town, which was formed 10 years ago, took part in the regional round before qualifying for the 80 kV Animator Choral Competition national event. Fourthly, understand that the choir has the ambition to compete in the World Choir Games in Tshwane next year and to travel to Spain in 2019. And therefore, lastly, wishes the Kensington Choral Girls Choir Music much success in their future competitions. I so move, House Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. That concludes motions without notice. The next item on the order paper is member statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement?
Angibonge, Chair. Hospital upgrade benefits more than 300 people. The ANC welcomes the upgrade of the Kutsong TP Hospital valued at over 436 million in Matatiela in the Eastern Cape and views it as a pillar of hope for employment and attainment of skill in the construction industry around the area. More than 300 people stand to benefit from the upgrade of the world-class modern hospital, and since the start of the project, 96 local people have received Construction Education and Training Authority accreditation to equip them with skills that will sustain them post the construction of the project. Furthermore, the project has set aside over 94 million in construction work for local small, micro, medium enterprises, and currently over 14 local SMEs contractors have been awarded contract worth a combined value of 8.1 million as of the second quarter of this year. The construction of this project is implemented by the Kuha Development Corporation on behalf of the Department of Health in the province and had brought about much needed skill training and development in the area. Obtaining such skill via this project empowers those to go further and find jobs where they can utilize their skill further. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. A reminder again, it's only 1 minute, 30 seconds for the statements. Where are we?
House
GA?
Chairperson.
GA?
House Chairperson. May I address you in terms of Rule 132? House Chairperson, I'm sure if you cast your eye around the chamber, as far as I can see, there's only one minister that's actually present here today out of 35. That's Minister Davies. And while he must be complimented for being here today, I think it's an indictment on the executive. that 1 out of 35 of the ministers who exercise executive authority in the Republic and for which they're accountable to this Parliament is present today. Now, last night we had the figures from the last financial year. 319 member statements read out in the House, 119 executive responses. Clearly a horrific problem with this very important model that's represented in our oversight model of executive accountability. And I ask you with genuine concern, what is the point of us reading out member statements, all of us, where there's one minister who could potentially respond to it? It makes a complete mockery of this Parliament. And I would suggest that the members of the executive that are not here today should be charged with contempt as set out in the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament Act, because they are deliberately impeding the ability of this House to do its job, which is to hold the executive accountable.
Honorable members, besides the last part where that I think that can come as a resolution to the House. I cannot respond to that one, but in as far as the absence, I think we really have to do our work and make sure we read statements because we represent our constituencies.
Order, Chair. Order, Chair. Chair, you are moderating on a substantive, legitimate issue that is being raised, which requires your ruling. Because
Honorable
basically, it renders the relevancy of member statement useless to give a member statement in the absence of ministers. And in fact, it's vulgarization of the program of this House.
Thank you very much.
Why are we having it as an item when there are no ministers? That's the point that is being raised. Please answer it genuinely.
I'm saying I'm doing that.
And give ruling.
Ungazongitshela njalo. Honorable Chief Whip.
House Chair, we fully concur that it will be a good thing for our executive to take the session on member statements serious. We fully agree. That's why, Honorable Steenhuisen, the Rules Committee is seized with this matter. It's seized with this matter. The Rules Committee, now, it assists to listen a bit, just to listen a bit. It assists. And again, the Rules Committee has taken the matters that it has brought before itself through its own subcommittee, precisely because all of us abhor this type of a situation that we are confronted with today. So therefore, whilst we agree with you, but we will still move that we still pursue the Rules Committee route to deal with this matter that we are confronted. That's why it is before the Rules Committee in the first instance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we proceed? The DA, did you take your... Okay.
Chairperson?
Yes, ma'am.
My humble request. When the bells were rung here earlier, ministers came into the House. Immediately after that, they left. You know why? It's because they do not respect the duties that they are given by the people. And you cannot expect us to read statements to empty seats. Who is going to respond? Who is going to respond? You can't expect us to just do it for the sake of doing it. We are not ticking boxes here. We are working. We can't just do that exercise to tick the box that today's member statements were read. They are read for the purpose of getting answers from the ministers. If that cannot be done, the exercise is fruitless.
Thank you very much. I think we continue with our program. GA?
All right, let's continue with the farce then. When one of the ANC's leading lights in the Nelson Mandela Bay, Chippy Olver, writes a book that is entitled How to Steal a City, it pays to take notice. Olver's book is a tell-all tale of corruption, undue influence, and maladministration at the hands of the ANC and former Mayor Danny Jordan. It reveals how the desperate ANC government of Nelson Mandela Bay misused municipal funds and resources for campaigning purposes and pressured officials and ministers to approve certain contracts in return for donations. It tells how the cash-strapped ANC regional structure leaned on municipal officials to keep the lights on at their offices. Ulver describes the ANC and its government in Nelson Mandela Bay as, and I quote, a web of lies, threats, and a sophisticated political syndicate designed to milk a city dry, and exposes how the municipal procurement process was manipulated on a day-to-day basis. In fact, he calls it a criminal network closely aligned to the ANC. But we should not be surprised. This is the ANC of 2017. This is what has become of the party of Tambo and Mandela. It is the party of Gupta and Putin, Sheikh and Zuma. The DA mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, Councillor Athol Trollip, has already committed to a comprehensive investigation of all allegations, because that is what good governments do.
Thank you. EFF.
I will read it because it does not require an answer, it's a message. To you, Marcella. Yesterday's medium-term budget policy statement and any other speech made by Mr. Malusi Gigaba will never be legitimized by the EFF. Will not legitimize his appointment as a minister, which in actual fact is just an extension of Mr. Zuma. He is not different from Duduzane. With Mr. Gigaba at the treasury is as good as having Atul, Ajay, and Rajesh Gupta sitting with the public person Saxon Welsh Shibin. With Ubaba Duduzane as chief enabler of state capture and looting, with Gigaba and Mr. Gigaba is the principal implementer. While Minister of Home Affairs, while he was a Minister of Home Affairs, he illegally naturalized the Guptas and citizens of South Africa. As the Minister of Public Enterprise, he handed over SAA.
Please take your seat. Honorable member, what's your point of order?
It's according to Rule 84.
Okay.
Rule 84, referring to members as Amasela, as thieves, is unparliamentary. Thank you.
Honorable member, the issue of Amasela is still being deliberated on, but we are not supposed to rule them off as out of order. Can you continue? We will still come with a comprehensive ruling on it.
As the Minister of Public Enterprises, he handed over SAA, ESCOM, and Denel to the Guptas. We will find all the bribes that SAP has admitted to paying for Transnet tenders, and we can guarantee South Africa that some of the money is with Mr. Gigaba and Brian Molefe, and will not be surprised if Telkom is sold to one of the Gupta companies, which was sold yesterday with you. You endorsed it. Mr. Gigaba will collapse South Africa's fiscal policy and the economy because he's a Gupta stooge.
Honorable member, time has expired. ANC.
Thank you, Chair.
House Chair. The ANC.
Honorable members, please sit. Honorable members, where are you? Please sit. I will call who will speak. Honorable Mutapo.
The African National Congress welcomes appreciation the boycotting of Roundtable Chefs Festival by celebrated and renowned South African chefs, Chris Erasmus of Foliage and Franschhoek, and Ozzy Osman of Ozzy's Kitchen in Sandton. Erasmus and Osman have joined prominent international chefs and restaurateurs in calling on their colleagues through an open letter to withdraw from the upcoming Israeli Roundtables Culinary Festival. The cooking festival taking place between the 29th October and 17th of November this year is sponsored by the Israeli government. The festival is also in partnership with Den Hotels, which has an Israeli hotel built in an illegal settlement on stolen Palestinian land. ANC believes that the renowned chefs on boycott cannot be faltered. Million Palestinians are denied equal rights by the state of Israel. They live in conditions which closely resemble the apartheid system that existed in South Africa. There's no right of free speech, assembly, or movement. Today, Palestinians are discriminated against in terms of education, healthcare, and legal services. While the Israeli government sponsors international chefs who cook delights, it continues to deny people of Palestine their livelihoods, push families from their lands, and limit access to water. The ANC salute the chefs for this progressive move.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Earlier today, it was revealed in the Wall Street Journal that German-based software giant SAP has reported its Gupta-linked accounts to US authorities for further investigation. It further stated that it had commenced disciplinary procedures against 3 of its employees as regards misconduct over issues relating to Gupta-related third-party business concerns that involved around 100 million rand paid in kickbacks to secure massive contracts with Transnet. Chairperson, the rot of state capture in South Africa is surfacing now at an alarming global rate. Its tentacles are quite beyond comprehension, almost stupefying. We as South Africans have been ensnared in a nefarious agenda of a politically aligned elite group of profiteers, with our country, people, and national fiscus consummate pawns and losers. Yesterday, we heard the Minister of Finance say, nuclear cannot be afforded. Yet 10 minutes later, Honorable Mahlobo, the Minister of Energy, was talking to reporters outside, and I heard him say, nuclear is still on. We will find the money. Are there 2 centers of power in this country? Honorable Rob Davies needs to respond because he's the only cabinet minister that is here. Thank you.
Thank you. UDM. ANC, Honorable Matlala. No, I called UDM. Oh.
We're always in this corner, Honorable Chair.
I was looking at
Thank you.
Sela.
Even in the absence of all the ministers in the security cluster, including the newly appointed Bongo, he is not here. I will still read this. I said ministers. I said ministers.
Okay.
You must understand your grammar. I said ministers. That was my prefix. Understand your grammar or go back to class.
Honorable member, are you going to read your statement? Please read your statement.
My prefix, I collected all the ministers under that prefix, okay? On Tuesday, the Minister of Police stood in front of the nation and presented crime stats for South Africa. In his own admission, the minister accused police officers, the very people whom he tasked to maintain law and order in the most dangerous areas of South Africa, as failures. The issue is that the minister did not use the crime stats as a reflection of his own poor performances later in that area of governance. He rather chose to smoothly deploy that tactic that recently appointed ministers have become familiarized to, that is to shift the blame. According to the ministerial reply to Honorable Kola Barnard, there are approximately 3,500 South African police service officers that the minister smoothly deviates attention to. That are uncertified to carry firearms, but still carry them on the pretext that they've been permitted to do so. Now, this has several points of concern for the UDM and the people of South Africa. Firstly, why is the minister not enforcing the relevant policy to ensure that only police who are certified to carry firearms that actually carry them, not permitted? Secondly, if these police officers who are uncertified are attacked and disarmed of their firearms, it may mean that they were not fit enough to control the firearms in the first place. They should not be handling them, the firearms. The UDM does no more calls on government to do any better.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Now we say, step aside.
Thank you. Your time has expired. ANC, Honorable Matlala.
Point of order, Chairperson.
Order.
Before you called Honorable Filtane, you referred to Honorable Kwakwazisela.
No.
Do you think that is unparliamentary?
No, I didn't. Honorable Matlala, ANC.
Yes, thank you, Chair. House Chair, the President of China, Xi Jinping, on Wednesday introduced the members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo, which is the highest decision-making body of the governing Chinese Communist Party.
The standing committee members will work alongside President Xi as he embarks on a second five-year term as party leader with an agenda to spread prosperity and expand the global influence of the world's second largest economy. As expected, Xi was given a renewed mandate following the first meeting on Wednesday of the new Central Committee that was elected at the party's twice-a-decade National Congress. The party Congress had already elevated Xi's status on Tuesday at its closing session by inserting his name and doctrine into the party's constitution, and alongside past leaders Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping, cementing his status as the most influential leader of the country in decades. ANC congratulated President Xi, the Chinese Communist Party, and the people of China for their achievement and visionary leadership. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. APC?
Thank you, Chair. The African People's Convention, the Party of Revolution, expresses its solidarity with the peace and freedom-loving people of Swaziland. Swaziland cannot be the old country in SADC or Africa that does not allow for free political activities and the popular sovereignty of its people. The APC condemns the harassment and arrest of political activists using draconian laws and a 44-year-old state of emergency, which has concentrated executive, legislative, and judicial powers on the king in ways totally inconsistent with African culture and democratic practice. South Africa, as the chair of SADC, must make resolving the Swaziland situation its urgent and central task. The same way that SADC has envoys to assist with political challenges in the DRC and Lesotho, so should it be with Swaziland. The Party of Revolution, the APC, calls on all conscious and progressive people in our country to rally in support of the people of Swaziland and their progressive movements in their struggle to call their souls their own. We have thus today joined the Swaziland People's Liberation Movement demonstration in Tshwane and intend to sustain this till victory. I thank you.
Thank you. ANC, Honorable Maisela.
Thanks, House Chair.
Maisela.
Thank you. No,
sir.
it's, oh.
Yeah. The African National Congress applauds the effort by Xolisa Menemene, who had ensured accessibility, convenience, and affordability for his X-ray services to the townships of the Eastern Cape. The 33-year-old Menemene has seen the problem of people in townships struggling to get X-ray services and decided to offer his services with affordability and of prices. According to him, he had to consider the challenges that people in townships encounter, such as unemployment or not earning enough to cover health matters. The Port Elizabeth Bond Xolile consults about 10 patients a day sent by general practitioners in the township for his services. The disease most common amongst the patients he has discovered is breast cancer. Xolisa was raised by a single parent with siblings and attended Lawson Brown High School and graduated with, at the PE Technikon, now known as Nelson Mandela University, where he studied radiography. After doing research on the X-ray market in townships, he realized that the patients to be referred to X-ray centers in urban areas and hospitals in town was time-consuming, costly for patients. He started his practice at the Ziabuya Shopping Center in...
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
DA?
ANC greed and bad governance keep poor people poor. The Insumvubu Dam project has still not begun, despite all the promises of water and employment to 720,000 households in the drought-stricken areas of Lady Grey, Rousseau, and Sterkspreid. The project has been stalled because Minister Nomvulo Mokonyane has tried to bypass tender processes. She tried to give a big tender to a Chinese company, but was stopped by Treasury and the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. President Jacob Zuma even had a sword-turning ceremony for the project in April 2014, just before the last elections. Now, it is obvious this was nothing more than a ploy to win votes. Thousands of people are still relying on trucks to deliver water. Those trucks are supposed to come every second day. 2 months ago, the trucks broke down and processors closed off stacks in frustration. The minister should account for the delays in this 12.5 billion rand project, which is sorely needed by thousands of poor South Africans. It's a pattern we've seen before. Big promises, then money gets allocated, but when it comes to delivery, the giving out of contracts to cronies is more important for this government than serving our own people. It's not for nothing that this minister is known as a queen of empty promises.
Thank you. EFF.
Thank you, ma'am. Today marks 3 years since Senzo Mayiwa, Orlando Pirates and Bafana captain was murdered. To date, the Mayiwa family and the entire nation are waiting for those who killed him to be brought to justice. The investigation has stopped and the South African police services have altogether failed to bring finality to this matter. It is not acceptable to the Mayiwa family, the football community and the whole of South Africa that a person can be killed in the presence of more than one witness, but the investigation has resulted in no arrest. The case of Senzo shows that serious crimes are committed and criminals get away with murder, literally and figuratively. Until this case is resolved and the murderers are brought to book, this case is symbolic of the basic failure of the South African police services to fight crime in this country, as there are many families that are yet to receive justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. ANC Manana. Honorable Manana.
Thanks, House Chair. Men arrested for trying to leave South Africa with 10 million in currency to appear in court. The African National Congress welcomed the arrest of a man found in possession of 2 suitcases filled with 10 million worth of currency at the Cape Town International Airport on Wednesday, 18th of October 2017. The 38-year-old suspect was allegedly from Pietermaritzburg en route to United Arab Emirates when customs officials pounced on him. He appeared in Belleville Magistrates Court on Thursday on charges of contravening Section 15 of the Custom and Excise Act 19 of 1964, which is a failure to declare. The Hawks Serious Commercial Crime Unit members were summoned to the scene for further investigations. The ANC calls upon the authorities to leave no stone unturned in their process of investigating the trial and origin of this money. The ANC condemns money laundering, and we hope that if the suspect is found guilty, he will be held accountable here in Western Cape, because this is a province of this DA. I thank you.
Thank you. ANC, Honorable Mola. Order, honorable members. Honorable Mola.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC's policies aimed at combating and strengthening drug trafficking and substance abuse are bearing fruit, as evidenced in the seizure of 30 kg of cocaine estimated at almost 9 million by South African Revenue Services customs officials in 2 separate incidents. One was at OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg, and the other was the seizure of heroin with a street value of 3.1 million by customs officials at King Shaka International Airport in Durban. These successful operations have been made possible by the increased joint operations between SARS and the SABs. The ANC therefore commends SARS and the SABs for their swift actions. These drugs were destined to end up on the street and townships and in the hands of our children. I thank you.
Thank you. DA?
The DA welcomes the decision by the Mayor of Tshwane, Solim Simang, to sell the mayoral mansion for 5 million. This mayoral mansion was renovated by the previous ANC administration for over 12 million to be a palace of comfort for their former mayor, Sputla Ramokgopa. The sale of the mayoral mansion will now make funding available for the construction of at least 50 houses for residents who are currently on the housing waiting list. The looming sale of this mayoral mansion makes the stark contracts between the ANC and the DA clear. While the ANC is obsessed with mansions and luxurious vehicles for their leaders in government, the DA is purely preoccupied with improving the quality of lives of residents. We congratulate the Mayor of Tshwane for taking yet another bold step towards the realization of his commitment to dispose of non-strategic municipal assets to create housing opportunities for the poor. I thank you.
Thank you. ANC, Honorable Sheho.
Thank you, House Chair.
My apologies for pronouncing your surname wrongly. Continue, ma'am.
Thank you, House Chair. The ANC is of the view that the transformation of institutions dealing with crime, including integrated efficiency, is critical. This applies to management, expansion of personnel, utilization of latest technology, and enhanced intelligence capacity. We therefore welcome the handing over of 200 high-performance vehicles and 75 motorbikes to law enforcement agencies in Soweto. These will go a long way in achieving the Gauteng's government target of reducing crime by 50% in priority police stations. These vehicles are fitted with the latest technology, including trackers and registration number plate recognition, to allow police officers to perform their job better. With the initiative, the police will ensure that gender-based violence and drug-related crimes are prioritized and reduced. This focus, however, must be placed on mobilizing society to participate and form partnerships with the police in their communities to assist with information on criminals in their midst. This should include an overhaul of gender and family relations and intolerance of abuse within communities. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much. That concludes this member statements. Ministerial responses. Do we have Honorable Davis?
Thank you very much, House Chair. Just to point out, I'm not the only member of the executive here. There's two deputy ministers as well. But let me start.
Point of order. Point of order.
Honorable Davis?
I'm not sure if the Honourable Davies needs a new battery, but I said members of the Cabinet. Deputy Ministers are not members of the Cabinet.
Thank you.
But they're members of the executive who can respond to member statements. Let me just say, I want to respond to just a few of the statements that have been made.
Order.
And the first one is the Honourable Singh, and he was raising the question of the approach of government on the acquisition or potential acquisition of nuclear energy. I think it is worth repeating what Minister Gigaba said yesterday. He said the energy mix going forward and the sequencing of adding new generation capacity will be informed by the updated integrated resource plan. That has to happen. That has not yet happened. He then went on to say that during the presidency budget vote debate on the 31st of May, President Zuma reaffirmed, and he quoted him, "With regard to nuclear energy, we reiterate that the program will be implemented at a pace that the country can afford," end quote. And as Minister Gigaba then comments, this will necessarily take the economic climate and electricity demand into consideration. As far as I know, those are the steps that Cabinet has agreed on for any potential decision on a nuclear acquisition program. That remains our policy. That's been well established, and it was repeated yesterday. On the questions that were raised about SAP reporting various accounts and also the statement that was made about the book, which I haven't read, by Chippy Olver, I think that the honourable member from the ANC indicated in respect of another case that with regards to money laundering and crimes of that nature, The ANC calls for no stone to be left unturned, and we call for our authorities to become active in this regard. And I would endorse what the Deputy President said the other day, that if our agencies are not active in this regard, we will find international bodies will be beating us to this task, and that will not be desirable. So I think that that is something that needs to be looked at. Then the last...
Your time
My
has
time's expired. Thank you very much.
Honorable Martins.
Honorable House Chair, the matter raised by Honorable Member Godi is very important that South Africa really does what it can in order to promote human rights in Swaziland. The other issue raised by way of complementing the work and the election of the new leaders of the Communist Party of China, we'd also support that congratulatory note by the African National Congress. The other issue of government responsibility of the new upgraded hospital in the Eastern Cape is also an important one. The health facilities in quite a number of our hospitals are not up to the standard in which they should be. So where there is improvement, it is to be applauded. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Osterhuizen.
Thank you, House Chair. I would like to respond to the honourable member of the EFF who spoke about the loss of Senzo Maya. And you will know that, Chairperson, that we from the National Sport and Recreation Department were very present in that funeral. It was a sad loss. But may I remind the honourable member that, yes, we would like to see justice and those that were responsible for that to be brought to account. The law is a long arm, my friend. The case is not closed, and we will certainly step up and would like to see with his parents that those brought to the book. May I just, Honourable Chairperson, also say on maternity health and the hospital there, it speaks to, like my honourable colleague said, it speaks to our government's commitment to deliver for our people, to give services to our people, and to better the life of all our people. Lastly, Honourable Chairperson, the EFF yesterday walked out where the Minister of Finance delivered his budget, midterm expenditure framework. Now, lastly, listen, we listen to you when you speak, but you confused, my friend. You weren't here to listen to the Honourable Minister, and what he did was you made up your minds, you walked out, and he came and you confused with the facts. So I would urge, in the interest of all South Africans, listen and make a contribution positively for all the people of our country, like we do as ANC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes ministerial responses. Only 3 were done.
Chairperson.
Honorable Paulson.
Yeah, I just want to tell that...
Honorable Paulson.
I want to tell that executive PA...
Honorable Paulson, that's not a point of order. I'm going to switch your mic off. Thank you. That's not a point of order. Honorable members, we now come to notices of motion. That's the last item on the order paper. Any member of the ANC?
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debate the impact of programs in enhancing the performance of basic education. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. DA?
Thank you, House Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at the next sitting, the House debate state capture and obstructions deliberately designed to impede a thorough investigation into the capturing of our state and measures to remove these.
Thank you. EFF?
Thanks, Chair. I hereby rise on behalf of the EFF that in its next sitting, the House debate the latest crime stats released by the South African Police Service. I so move.
Thank you. ANC, Honorable Mutapo.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates the data breach involving the personal details of an estimated 33 million South Africans, its impact on identity theft and other criminal activities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I move that the House at the next sitting debate the failure of government to uphold citizens' human rights by allowing toxic waste from mine dumps run freely into creeks, rivers and dams in and around Johannesburg and Israel. Awesome.
Thank you. NFP.
Ambonga sihlalo. Ekuhlaleni kwalendlu okulandelayo ngiyosukuma ngiphakamisa egameni le-National Freedom Party ukuba lendlu idinga udaba losomabhizinisi abasafufusa abadinga usizo lokucijwa ngamakhono nokuthola uxhaso lwezimali emabhange nasesikhungweni zikahulumeni ezixhasa osomabhizinisi abasathuthuka ukuba baqhube imisebenzi yabo. Ngiyaphakamisa.
Sithokoze. Mhlonishwa Matlala, ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debate 1, building a developmental state that is capable to lead efforts to overcome unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. UDM.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the UDM that the House at its next sitting should debate mechanism for monitoring, evaluation, and enforcement of the implementation of non-racial labor laws in the private sector in particular, especially the small-scale businesses. I so move.
Thank you. DA.
Ngiyabonga futhi sihlalo. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the scourge of murders affecting all citizens on a daily basis. I so move.
Thank you. EFF.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of EFF that in its next sitting, the House debate the role of government in moving towards a green economy. I so move.
Thank you. ANC, Honorable Maisela.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates dangers of cyber hackers to companies in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. ANC, Honorable Manana.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates how the tools of industrialization, localization can drive and advance higher value-added manufacturing to develop and sustain an inclusive economy. I move. Thank you.
Thank you. AIC not here, AHA not here. ANC, Honorable Mola.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates interventions to resolve the effects of drought in regard to food industry. I thank you.
Thank you. APC? PAC not here. GA?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the effect of absenteeism and prolonged sick leave on the service delivery levels and effectiveness of government departments at all levels of governance. I so move.
Thank you. ANC, Honorable Qeko.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates enabling the creation of conducive environment and support services for small and medium enterprises. I so move.
Thank you very much. Other honorable members, that concludes notices of motion and the business of the day. The House is adjourned. Thank you.